Folks, welcome this afternoon, and thanks so much for joining us. I counted it up between Shekar and Paris. There are 19 time zones, which is a tribute to the power of Don's ideas and a logistical nightmare. So thank you all for joining us all. It was amazingly easy to pull together a remarkable group of speakers in short notice. Thank you for that. It is, of course, a tribute to Don, the man we come together to honor. So I'm hoping what we can do today is have a new perspective on the man who brought us together, share some memories, a few laughs, and think about the fact that we are now Don's legacy. So how do we carry forward from here? So having set up for that, Heidi, are you on deck? Are you ready to go? Click the red microphone, unmute yourself. Please tell us.
Well, hello, everyone. I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for giving up your Sunday afternoon or evening or Monday morning or whatever it might be. I would hope that today's time is really a celebration and a happy time, even though it's a sad occasion. But I would like this to be a celebration of Don and the relationships that he had with all of you. And I'm anxious to hear your individual stories and maybe poke some holes in the legend and have some fun sharing history. Because people ask me this all the time, and as many of you know, we're deferring any memorial service, a church service. We do hope to have one at Northwestern at Alice Millar when the time is right. But I really don't want to do it until we can do it properly and get together and hug and do those and travel and do those things that you do. So I have no idea when it is going to be. It might be this fall, it might be a little later, but it will be. But for now, I think this is kind of a placeholder on that celebration and observation of his life. Don had a long and happy life, and I am full of gratitude to him for introducing me to most of you that I know, some that I have not actually met, but I know your names. And I am full of gratitude to you for your participation in this. And with that, I will turn it back to was that Joel Gray, who is our MC today?
I was kind of going for George Clooney, but
oh, okay. Well,
we'll settle for that. Thanks, Heidi. And look, I'm going to take the initiative to speak for the group, but all of us send our love and affection and respect. And all of us realize that it's because of you guys that we know each other, which in many cases are the best relationships of our lives, the best personal relationships with lifelong friends. In many, many cases, people met their spouses in the program, and business opportunities and careers came out of this, and this because of what you enabled. So thank you for that. I'd love to hear from a person who I used to think was absolutely insane until all the insane things he said turned out to be true. Dr. Martin Block, can you join us?
I can. Am I on? I guess I am. I guess I probably have known Don, 46 years, which is a long time. Don't ask me why I did this, but I counted up all the articles and paper presentations. I have 83 joint authored paper presentations with him, if you can believe that, and 35 refereed publications and 3 books. And I believe I probably can only claim as a co-author just maybe a twinge over half of what his output was. One of the things I can do probably better than anyone else is go back to the Michigan State days when he was a doctoral student. Believe it or not, Michigan State at the time, a big advertising program, did not have a media course. We added one, and as part of the media course, there was a media buying and simulation game we put together, written in Fortran, all on punched cards, with the students participating on remote terminals. I know, ye gods. I should say that when, which probably not many know, but when Don finished, graduated, and went to Northwestern, he was teaching creative. That might seem a little strange that he would teach creative, given everything else. But I'm going to go back very briefly to his dissertation, which is an empirical estimation of the advertising response function. I know, ye gods. It's very mathematical and very analytical, maybe unexpected. But anyway, that got he, and I guess me too, involved in trying to commercially estimate the response function. And that led to the beginnings of IRI. And sadly, all of IRI's efforts didn't lead very far. They didn't really show much in the way of ad effects. Wild and crazy promotion effects, but not much in the way of ad effects. If I can just briefly do a personal thing here. Towards the end, as IRI was desperate to demonstrate advertising effects, they dragged in academics, me being one. I am the world's leading authority on spaghetti sauce sales in Eau Claire, Wisconsin in the early 1980s. I know, that's impressive, isn't it? Really, with all the data torturing I knew, really wasn't able to show the impacts. But what I was able to find is that people who purchased Ragu, those households, were dog owners. People who purchased Prego were cat owners. And yes, I presented this at a national ARF meeting in New York. Ever since, the whole next 30 years, I've been heckled by Don on pet ownership. And what has been fun is every chance I got, I would stick dog ownership in as one of our variables. And more than once, he had to present a slide with dog ownership on it, which was kind of fun. Anyway, it's that inability to show ad effects that drew Don into direct marketing, where there's data. And now you can kind of see what the beginnings were of the IMC concept. Those of you who are alums, depending on when you graduated, I think it was about 1986, you got an MSA, a Master of Science in Advertising. Between now 86, 87 to maybe 91, 92, somewhere in there, you had one of three choices. You were either a Master of Science in Advertising and Promotion, or an MSA in Direct Marketing, or one in Corporate Public Relations. And that all came together 92-ish and became IMC, and it's been IMC ever since. Some of you who are alums might remember better than I the exact dates. A long story since, I could go on and on and on. I could easily fill up to 3 hours. I know, thinking ye gods. But with that, I should say, if Don had a tombstone, I would argue strongly that on the bottom of the tombstone, it should say, honorary dog owner. and I'll let that go.
Well, Martin, thank you. I will pick up and carry on Don's legacy as advocating for animal variables in all predictive models.
This may be why he does not get a tombstone.
Now, as I understand, the current plan is for Don's ashes to have a final resting place in the ocean off the south coast of Australia.
Yes.
With that in mind, we are going to warn the sharks.
Okay? If I could add just I know this isn't really appropriate, but Don, through most of his career, had more United Air miles than probably the pilots. And it would probably be most appropriate if it could be done is to scatter the ashes at 40,000 feet somewhere.
I don't think they let you do that. But,
I know, I understand, but it just the concept of it, given how much he traveled.
United was very kind, and they transferred his remaining miles to me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh.
Martin, thank you. We have next in line, the man who is horrified every time somebody tells him that I work for him.
Not true.
Dean Charles Whitaker.
I would say you work with me, not for me. But thank you very much, Jim. Thank you, Martin, for putting this together. Heidi, we send you all our love and affection. We are all with you here. You know how much Don meant to the school. And I think that's why we have this large assembly here. I confess, in my time here, Don and I were like ships that passed through the night. We didn't see each other that often, but he did have a really profound effect on me and on the trajectory of my career very early on. It goes all the way back to 1993. I had just started teaching at Medill, and Northwestern was embarking on this brand new mode of communication called email. And all of the faculty had to go through email.
Whoops.
There he is. Charles?
Muted.
Charlie, light the dean up.
I don't think you're supposed to do that to the dean.
Thank you, Charlie. We all had to go through email training. We had these training sessions. Abe, Martin, you guys may remember that. We had these training sessions in 306 in Fisk, as a matter of fact. And they took us in relatively small groups. And I found myself coincidentally, just in a training session, sitting in between Dick Christian, one towering figure of IMC on my left, and Don on my right. And they wanted to know who the new kid was and were sort of asking me about myself and how I wound up teaching here. And I said, I just come from Ebony Magazine, where I spent a lot of time on the road, both nationally and internationally, doing stories. And I had small children. I said, the dean at that time, Michael Janeway, had recruited me to Medill, and I thought I would give this teaching thing a shot, but I had never taught. I'm not a scholar or an academic. And I said, I don't know that I'm long for this world, but, we'll see how it goes. And Don said to me, and this is not a direct quote, but it was something along the lines of, there are very few careers in life in which you get to have not only an impact on people, but an immediate impact on their lives and careers. And you get to see that in this role. And if you lean into that, being here at Northwestern, you will find that this is one of the most rewarding careers that you could ever have. And that was like a lightning bolt moment for me. And here I am 27 years later, kind of still leaning into that career. And I don't think I would have been as open to that had Don not sort of planted that seed in my head at that time. So I'm very grateful for him to that. It has indeed been the most rewarding career, and I have no regrets, but it certainly is because of that tiny bit of advice that Don gave me very, very early on. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Charles. And I was reminded, Tom Collinger is not able to join us today, but he did ask me to remind the group that Don's ideas have created a nightmare for Charles, because it was because of Don's ideas that the school has the name that includes integrated marketing communications, which for those of us with business cards and/or diplomas, this can sometimes be a challenge. But of course, as Tom pointed out, here's one man's idea who affected the name of an entire school. So look forward to that. We do have joining us the winner of the Man Mile Award in India, way early in the morning, Shekar Swami. Shekar, who are you? Where are you? How do you know Don? And tell us a story.
Well, thank you, Jim. And Heidi, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yep. Hugs to you. I'm so sorry I could not connect on the phone. We've tried a couple times, but I will keep trying and I will see you soon. Yeah, here I am sitting in India, in Chennai tonight. It's 2:48 in the morning. And Martin, I, along with my colleague and friend, John Christensen, came into Medill in 1979 when it was still MSA. And so we've known Don now for 41 years. And believe it or not, yes, I am living evidence that he taught us creative. So here we go. The thing about Don and me is that I not only subjected myself to being a student, later on in life, he co-opted me and I became a co-teacher with him. And we taught the global marketing course, marketing communications course at Medill for, I don't know, 18, 19 years. So either something is wrong with me or something is wrong with him. So anyway, there's lots of things wrong with both of us, so we stuck with it. And the story that I want to talk about is, you know, as everybody in this group knows, Don always has the last word and he can always say something smart. And and we also know, as Martin said, he was a great traveler. And he often visited me in India. It was always my pleasure to have him. On one of the trips, Heidi, you will recall, we took off from Bangalore. We drove 4 hours west of Bangalore on Indian roads. And we went to this place called Belur and Halibut. For those of you who don't know it, it's 11th, 12th century temple ruins with some of the most amazing stone carvings that you will ever see in your life. So I wasn't sure. Don was, I mean, this must have been 10, 12 years ago. Don was well into the 70s in terms of age. And I wasn't sure how we would take the trip. So we land up in this small little Indian town called Hassan. And of course we get, well, it's not particularly a place where they have the Ritz or the Four Seasons. By the way, they don't even have a Motel 6. Forget about the rest of it. And here we were in the tiniest of hotels. I think Don just about fitted into the bed. I'm not sure. And I kept saying, are you guys going to be okay? And they were, you know, they were fine. But the more important part of this is we went to the ruins, the temple, the Vishwakarma temple, which took 100 years to build. And Don walked around, believe me, we walked around there for several hours. And for once, he just kept staring and he kept shaking his head and he kept shaking his head and he kept shaking his head. And he did not have any words coming out of his mouth. So no last word for Don on that day. I remember him greatly, deeply. We miss you, Don. And yes, you can make him speechless. Believe me, we have done it. Thank you.
Thank you, Shekar. That's great. Don had, among Don's many annoying habits was that he would ask me questions. This probably happened to all of you. He would ask me questions for which I would have no clue. And I would go off and think about it. And 6 years later, oh, no, it was okay as long as he was around. Because I could take him out to lunch. I could, go out with Heidi and we'd all have lunch. And I'd say, hey, I've been thinking about this thing you asked me in the hallway in 2012. Now, however, given Heidi our last lunch a couple of months ago, in 2029, I'll have a really smart comment. But among the points we made earlier, Don just wasn't a thought leader, he was a thought enabler. And boy, is that so much more powerful. So, thank you, Shekar. Phil Kitchen, in from England. Thank you for staying up late. Can you join us? Who are you? Where are you? How do you know Don? And what's your story?
Well, I'm that crazy Englishman. I've written a few papers with Don as well, and a few books. And but my memories go back to 1995. Yeah? I had an idea for a journal called the Journal of Marketing Communications. Put it to a publisher, and they sent out a questionnaire asking who were the right people to serve on the board of this journal. And the name Don Schultz came back on about 78% of the questionnaires. So I wrote to Don and asked him if he would become deputy editor of the journal, which he agreed to do in '95. And he stayed in that role and capacity until just this past month, really. But one thing that was interesting, he sent me a book that I'd never heard of before called Integrated Marketing Communications. And he asked me if I would review the book for the journal, which I agreed to do. Mm-hmm. So I must admit, I wrote a very glowing review of the book IMC. And then I wrote to Don personally and said, sorry, Heidi, there were some things about the book I didn't like, and which was a bit cheeky of me, really, because he was like from this good university. I was like Podunk University in the UK. And much to my surprise, he invited me to come to Northwestern. I went to his little office with the smallest leather chair you've ever seen in your life, which he used to sit upon. Then he took me to his office, Agora Incorporated, which was like the biggest office I'd ever seen. And then he took me to his home, which I remember was a fire station that had been dragged across the road and put on some kind of basement. And the reason why I'm mentioning that, because in all my memories of him, the other thing I remember about the house, Heidi, was a stuffed parrot that used to be in the living room, a very large stuffed parrot, which Don said he loved for some reason or other. But anyway, that's beside the point. But anyway, what I remember about Don at that time was that he was so kind and generous to somebody from the United Kingdom, somebody that didn't have a background particularly in marketing, communications, or advertising, somebody who was trying to, just starting out really in an academic career. And he took the time for me at Northwestern, at the Medill School of Journalism. He took time to show me around Agora. He introduced me to Heidi, and he showed me his house. And I just remember he took time, and that meant a great deal to me. And now, as I look back over, for example, 25 years of association with Don and with Heidi, a lot of the publication things sort of drift into the air, to be honest with you. They're there, they exist, they've happened. But the thing I remember more is the association of Don as a friend. I think back in 1995, I needed not just a friend, but also a mentor. And we sort of latched onto each other, I guess, and became friends. But I have to say this, he was always, in my view, the leader. He was always the man with ideas. And one last thing before I go, we wrote a book together in 2000. My idea of writing a book is an academic textbook, lots of references, everything justified, lots of caveats, the excuses, and so forth. Meanwhile, Don just writes a chapter in like 2 days, sends it back to me. Trying to keep up with him was like trying to keep up with the Roadrunner. And but I was so impressed by just his ability to put words, ideas, concepts together. And time again, I saw him in conferences around the world. He always took time to talk to people, not just the big names or anything else, but he spoke to people who were starting out in their academic career, encouraged them, he gave them reasons to look forward toward the future. So to me, he's a big man, not just in a physical sense. That was what he was always big in that sense, but he was big in every sense of the word. And I just had and have a lot of time and respect for him and for his great contribution. I miss him. Heidi knows that, and I'm sure a lot of people will miss him as well. So that's it.
Philip, thank you so much, and I appreciate your joining us. It is funny for those of us who only got to know Don kind of after he was on Mount Rushmore. The whole idea that Don, and by the way, Martin told me this, he was Don E. Schultz. And Don always used to explain his family was too poor to afford an ALD. So that's why he was Don, not Donald. And there he was growing up in Oklahoma. He was born in 34. So in 44, everybody's off to war. But Don is home and he's tall and he's a farmer's license, and he's driving a truck around the oil fields when he's 10 years old. And there he is selling ads in Texas, and there he is running the Elsie the Cow Borden's account in New York in the ad business, and there he is. Think of this, people. Here's Martin, a young college professor, and he has Don as his 40-year-old graduate assistant. Think about that. And that was before he got to us. So, I mean, just the journey is remarkable. Next up, somebody who's really carrying on the legacy. Anya, are you with us? Can you tell us?
I'm here.
Marvelous. So, who are you? Where are you? How do you know Don, and what's the story?
It was the summer of 2008. Professor Schultz's class was scheduled on the day right after we came back from our global class in India, which was taught by both Don and the previous speaker, Shekar. You gave me an A. Thanks, Professor.
You got all A's.
It was an afternoon in a lovely, comfortable Chicago summer. We were all heavily jet lagged. We kind of expect Professor Schultz would just call you a day and quickly make an intro. And we were all kids in our early 20s. We didn't know much about the class or what it would be. So we wouldn't even know if he told the class without any preparation or any care. But he didn't. He spent lots of time preparing for the class. He knew our names, Anya, and assigned tons of homework. They turned out to be the pattern. He always prepared, he always worked hard, so we always did. He gave feedback on homework promptly, so he always knew that we needed improvement. He told me to always do my best, to never treat any challenges lightly. There was a reason that I was able to survive in my time in those top tech companies in the Bay Area. Here's another story. I started IMC program just as when I arrived in the US from Taiwan. I barely spoke any English at the time and understood only half of most of classes. Sorry, Professor Jean Carey, I only know half of your class. I hate the class participation score because if you cannot understand the class, how would you ask a question? Like Martin, how would I ask a question about your class that you asked me as to analyzing the data from the supermarkets? One day I heard people ask Professor Schultz about the difference between IMC and the MBA. I was expecting him to get upset. Why wouldn't he? He has been advocating IMC for decades, and you guys still don't get it? But he didn't. He didn't get upset. He explained tirelessly. After that, I talked to him, and he told me that you just have to keep trying, and you will find a way. At his next class, I read textbook and wrote down questions in advance. I listened to the keywords, and I asked questions. When I heard of keyword, Professor Schultz, I got a question about marketing return on investment. Of course, I didn't understand the answer, but who cares? I got my participation score. My name is Anya Cheng, IMC 2008, now based in San Francisco. And on behalf of all Taiwanese students, I want to say we will miss you, Professor Schultz, and thank you.
Well, thank you, Anya. I confess, for a long time, I thought all those great students who came to us from Taiwan were Paul Wang's cousins. So thank you all. By the way, heads up, I'm gonna call on Clarke Caywood in just a moment, but after Clarke, we are going to so clean yourselves up. We're going to do a Zoom selfie of the global IMC community. So run out and get your hair cut, and work harder, Ed. Sorry, Marty. So prep for that. We'll ask you to be patient when we do it, because there are so many of us. We're on a couple of different screens. But Clarke, are you with us? Are you there now? Clarke, I recall. You remember the thing that Daniel Patrick Moynihan once said: the reason academic politics are so fierce is because there's so little at stake. Now, the problem when you have so many smart people in a room is they don't always agree. And we would have these epic challenges between friends of the meaning of this or the meaning of that. And I would very helpfully observe in faculty meetings when Clarke and Don were disagreeing. Mommy and Daddy are fighting. It was very disturbing to me. Nevertheless,
you're using one of my lines.
We're all here together. Clarke.
Thank you, Jim. And thanks for doing all of this hard work and getting Heidi's permission. I think it's something that the school is overlooking, and I'm sure we all feel great need to do this, and that's why we're here. Charles is a great dean. He's my 10th dean since I've been here at Northwestern. And, but I've always thought Don was dean. So Don was sort of the leader of the band and kept us thinking all the time about new ideas. First time I met him was I was supposed to do an interview with him down in Chicago. Came down from the business school at Madison. And I was supposed to meet him at the Marriott Hotel, and he was going to pick me up out front. So this was a sign of things to come that I jumped in the car. We drove around the hotel maybe about 7 times, and he let me out, and that was my interview. So that was the sign of things to come with more and more meetings. And I remember Marty at that same conference was off to a business meeting as well to help us with our data collections at the university. I was delighted because I could see that the leader of the band, and he was that person back then, was both a practical person and an academic. And that's one of the reasons I seriously considered Northwestern and Medill IMC, or Medill as it was called, School of Journalism, and we'll get to what became called. I can show you one of the, for some of the students who haven't seen this one, here's one of the t-shirts. There's one of my collection of IAMC, Integrated Advertising and Marketing Communication, and a whole bunch of other poorly done logos, but never mind. They are, and here are our companies that are supporting us. So we were in the t-shirt business. It was part of not just advertising, but actually using new media. And I think a lot of the people on the screen today will welcome that and appreciate that. That was a sign of things to come in our field. I realized after this quick introduction that Don was really and it was going to be a very powerful force in whatever we did, but we weren't talking about IMC during that meeting because we were still working our way towards that, but it would happen within a year. And so when it morphed from the advertising department, or advertising, which was ranked in the top 1, 2, or 3 in the country, we also then went to the university with an idea about turning it into a more advanced kind of series of courses. We had direct mail, which is a long story, but a fascinating story that taught us a lot and what finally developed with data. And some public relations, which was appealing to me because I'd worked in politics. And if you don't know the value of PR with politics right now, listen again. Okay. I didn't say the state, Jim. That's a warning sign. All right, so Don was really the father of it. There were some other people in the room who were working with him closely to come up with additional research. And we had an academic article that came out of it, but Don came out of it with a book that was extraordinary because it was a sign of 32 more books to come. And that's really where Don, I think, helped us build a global reputation. I saw him all over the world. I didn't go as many places as he did, but one time when I was chairman, I put up a map of the world and I started putting pins in. And the pins for Don that were, I think, red, does that sound right, were just all over the map. And so the other faculty got the idea that they could ask for travel money too, and we became more globally well known. China became an important part after Taiwan. Taiwan was always important to us, but we visited China for 20 years and it opened up for us in terms of opportunity as well. So in the side work that we did, Don was always first choice. I hate to say that to some of my other friends here, but he was first choice with the companies like AT&T, the Internal Revenue Service, which we enjoyed getting checks from them, letters from them that had checks in them, not the other way around. And then Chinese and Japanese EMBA programs. But all of these companies, including IBM and AT&T, had Don as the kickoff speaker. So that was a sign that he was considered the key man to set the tone for others of us who would follow and give talks that day or in other opportunities when they learned about the work of the rest of the faculty. I would invite students, if they were interested in those companies, to come over and sit in the back of the room at the Transportation Center. I would invite them, if they were from that country, to come in as well. And I think that was always an opportunity for the students to understand what was happening all over the world. And just as a final line, really, that Don has always been larger than life, and he will continue to be. Thanks, Jim, and thanks, everybody. Thanks for all of you.
Well, thank you, Clarke. Among the warnings, so we did warn all the speakers that if they went too long, the IMC orchestra would play them off, just like at the Oscars. I didn't do it, Clarke. I didn't do it.
I didn't hear it.
So what we're playing is Okie from Muskogee by Merle Haggard in honor of our Don. So thank you, folks. Let's can we do an IMC selfie for just a minute? Okay, so nothing in your teeth, chin up, smile, be alert. It's going to be a couple of screens that we have. There you go. Yeah. Forget about it at the hair. So you all look great. And for those of you who have chosen, oh, hold on, Merle. I see you, Susan. But for those of us who have chosen to mute your picture, you're going to miss out. You'll want to say you were here. Okay. So we've got you for that screen. Hi, Nance. You're looking good. Looking all relaxed. Bridget, you're looking good. Hi, David. Deb, how are you? Oh, David. You see, David's got his professional smile there. This is a guy who practices. Okay, thank you very much. Next up, in fact, we do have Susan Jones. Susan, who are you? Where are you? How do you know Don, and what's your story?
Okay, thank you so much, Jim. And before I start, let me just say, Jim Carey is the only person with whom I've ever spent an entire Northwestern football game talking about IMC and not looking at the field. So we really could get into it.
Well, Susan, of course, realizes that the subtext of that meeting was to enable me to steal my first syllabus from her.
Yes.
So she was very thoughtful about that and very generous.
So thank you. My name is Susan K. Jones. I'm a professor of marketing at Ferris State University in Big Rapids, Michigan. I'm coming to you today from Grand Rapids, Michigan, where I live. I have my BS in advertising and my MS in advertising from Northwestern. I won't say what year, but it was before Don got there. Heidi, I don't think we've met, but I do want you to know what an incredible positive influence Don has been on my life. I want you to know that. In the mid-1980s, I was very involved with the Chicago Association of Direct Marketing, as was Jim and many others in the, at that time, direct marketing community in Chicago, and something called the CADM Educational Foundation was being started. Why was it being started? In large measure because Don Schultz was working so closely with that organization to have us help start what was then the direct marketing master's program. And that program did start with a bang. And when they were looking for professors for it, well, I was not much of a teacher at the time. I had taught as an adjunct at Aquinas College here in Grand Rapids. but I knew Don slightly, and I contacted him and said, I'd like to teach direct marketing creative strategy. And he championed that. I don't think that was an easy sell. Who the heck is this woman from Grand Rapids? But he did champion that. I did it for 4 years, and I would drive over to Evanston, which I think showed how much I really wanted to do it. Both Phil and Clarke mentioned that a great IMC book, and I have to say, literally, when I read that book, there was a light bulb over my head. This made so much sense. And I've used that book ever since. And the concepts of it, of course. I did get Ferris State to change the name of our program to Advertising/IMC after championing and evangelizing this for years. Don was always so responsive. I remember I saw him back when there were phone booths, so obviously this is a while back. We're both at a bank of phones at a hotel. He said to whoever he was talking to, hold on just a second. And he said, Susan, I just wanted to let you know, I read your column in the CADM newsletter and I really like it. I mean, he didn't have to do that. That was such a boost to me. So another thing that happened, working with Steve Kelly at DePaul University in the early 90s, we started putting out a book called the IMC Handbook. We reached out to Don to ask him if he would do a reading on what is IMC. And of course, he didn't just say yes, he grilled me about, is this really going to be an IMC book? Show me what's going to be in it and so on. We did the same thing when we had the idea for the International Journal of IMC. And as someone mentioned, I think it was Phil, this is the guy you want to have involved with your journal. So he said yes after he was grilling us about what the journal was going to be like. One other thing, Steve Kelly and I, every year until recently, put on IMC roundtables in Chicago in the summer. And Don and Martin would always come to these. They always had a new paper, but they never took themselves seriously. They'd get up there and say, well, aw shucks, I'm going to tell you about this, but let me know what you think about it. And I'll never forget one day he just stood up and he said, why is a frequency of 3 sacred? Who made that up? Why, the 4 Ps are a bunch of baloney. He would always say things like that just to see what people's reactions would be. And so the last thing I'm going to say is 2 years ago, Steve Kelly and I put out a book called the IMC Source Book. We asked Don if he would update his IMC reading, and he said, nah, I'm past that. So what he wrote was, and this is so Don, the name of the reading he wrote was The Future of Advertising, or whatever we're going to call it. Thank you, Jim, for letting me be part of this.
Oh, well, thank you, Susan.
Thank you, Susan.
Thanks for your contributions. I've long suspected that the reason that Don and Heidi kept me around because I would say things to Don that she wanted to say, but she needed to be married. And Don kept me around because we have the same favorite mortal sin, which is blasphemy. And how much courage it is to stand up in a room and say something that will be unpopular and think it's fun. So, and an important point for us all. Kent Middleton, are you with us?
I am indeed.
Well, we had a big build-up. Who are you? Where are you? How do you know Don? And what's your story?
I'm one of Don's creative students that was earlier referenced. And before I start, I want to make sure that I do take this moment to say my hair is fabulous and I have lost weight. So, and Rishad and Jeannie, you can back me up later. Back in the 70s, Procter & Gamble was one of the companies that would come to what was then the advertising program. And they were different because you couldn't sign up to actually be in their list. They gave the deal to list. So the buzz prior to that was quite huge. Am I going to be on the list? So-and-so would be saying that I was an intern at Saatchi on their business. Maybe I'll be on the list and blah, blah, blah. I was a devoted creative student. I had no double resume. I did not actually know what client service meant, nor did I care. I went to a journalism school, take advertising, learn how to write ads. It made perfect sense to me at the time. And the day came, everybody got a package, or I thought everybody got this little packet with this like satanic symbol, which was their logo at the time. And beautiful pictures of very well-groomed young men walking through drugstores in inexpensive suits. And I got one of those and paid it no heed. And so this Monday comes around and then no one would talk to me, which wasn't completely absurd because I was a creative and everyone hated me anyway because I didn't take anything seriously. But they wouldn't talk to me at all. And I didn't understand why. Why are they not talking to me? And it turns out I was on the list. 10 of us were on the list and there was my name right in the middle of it, which made no effing sense whatsoever. So I go down the hall, out with the old days, at the end of the hall, which is where Dr. Schultz's office was. And those of you that may remember that, he had a chair much more akin to what they would have given a 4-year-old. So he sank really deeply in that thing, and his knees were always up by his face. And I walked in there and I said, and then, by the way, I had like a hair down to my shoulders and at least 2 drug problems that I can remember. And so I'm walking down the hall and I'm like, Dr. Schultz, I'm on the proctor list. Why am I on the proctor list? And he just looks up from this chair and Ken, I don't know why you're on the proctor list. I don't know why they want to talk to you. I said, well, so-and-so is really upset. They wanted to be talked to. If I don't go, because I'm not going to be a brand manager, if I don't go, I'm going to look like an arrogant ass. And he goes, well, Ken, you got to make your own decisions. But, they don't want to talk to so-and-so. They want to talk to you. I just was lost. I was like, I don't know what to, and he goes, well, maybe you'll get yourself a trip. Maybe you'll get yourself a trip to Cincinnati, which, by the way, I was really into trips, but Cincinnati was not on my bucket list. So I look at him and I go, I just don't get it. What am I going to tell him? Well, Kid, look, is it going to hurt you to talk to the nice man for 30 minutes? Bring him your book. They probably never seen one before. It'll be something to talk about. It'll be something new. So sure enough, I go in there and I brought my book, which was never referenced, but I did bring it in. And I had what was probably one of the strangest interviews that poor gentleman ever had his entire life with this long-haired freak talking about the Cincinnati Reds trading Pete Rose. And at the end of this, I think, well, yeah, that's going to be the end of it. It was a really awkward handshake. And I got called back, which at first I thought they called everybody back. No, they only called 2 of us back, which to me was a testimony to the fact that P&G doesn't really know what they're doing. And I eventually did get my trip to Cincinnati as a creative director on their business many, many, many years later. It wasn't until I was working with the faculty and teaching in subsequent summers for Dr. Schultz, I subbed him while he was in India or France or something, that I realized that the reason that Procter & Gamble put me on that list is that I had a faculty recommendation that they had called, and I found this out behind the scenes, right? They called the faculty, well, we definitely have to see, and somebody, which since the rest of them hated me, somebody had to put me on that list. So the weird and wondrous teaching alchemy, not just integrated marketing alchemy, but the teaching alchemy in Don Schultz's head was such that he actually thought that a reprehensible creative beast with a lot of blasphemy would have absolutely any reason to ever spend any time as a brand manager in Cincinnati, Ohio for Procter & Gamble. So Jim, thank you again for letting me go on and talk about something other than paper, because I didn't write any with him. But he will be missed. He was a profound and extraordinary influence on my life, even though he was a suit. And I've forgiven him for that. And even as one creative, he made me smarter. He put me, as many of my other fellow creatives that survived that, ahead of the game for when all the amazing changes went through the industry. In my career at Burnett, I was ahead of them at every step of the way. And that is completely up to him. And God love Vernon Freiberger, but he didn't have anything to do with that. That was all Don Schultz. Thanks all.
I have to say, Kent, because I've been going through a lot of Don's stuff that he had accumulated over the years, and there's much evidence of your work, and certainly the best cartoons ever made of Don.
Well, Kent, thank you very much. And it is interesting, and of course, you're bringing back memories. In fact, some memories that I don't have personally, but we do have lots of archival material from all of you. You've been sending me photos, you've been posting things online, sending me emails of Don from back in the day, from the Stone Age, after the earth cooled, when he was working with Martin, through to now, including an unfortunate period of plaid sports jackets. So we are trying to figure out what can we do with all of this material, which, by the way, includes, and this is something that you folks have co-created with me, on Don's 85th birthday, I sent out emails to 3,200 alums saying, it's Don's birthday, here's his email, wish him happy birthday, tell him where you are, tell him what you're doing, tell him what he meant to you. And I had no idea what would happen. This happened. It's astounding. But this is all of you telling stories like Kent just told that happened again and again and again. So going back to the point that Charles made earlier about making an impact on people's lives, it's a thing. So thank you for that. Now, let me go to another person, a teacher, but with whom I have an interesting connection because I am trying to give toys to his grandson. This is Marc Weinberger, who is Michelle Weinberg's dad. So Marc, you and I have just become connected now, but if you need dinosaurs, I'm your man. Tell us who you are, where you are, and tell us your story.
Hi, Jim. Thanks. Thanks for including me in this. I appreciate it. I was based in a marketing department at the University of Massachusetts all my career, and I always appreciated the integrated approach, maybe a little bit more than some advertising people who hung on to the advertising theme a little bit longer than some. But I got to know Don through the American Academy of Advertising, the 3As, where he was a frequent attendee for decades, and that's where I interacted with him. I always felt that Don had a little bit of a love-hate relationship with 3As. They I think, were a little bit reluctant with some of his ideas sometimes, but Don enjoyed being at the conferences, I think. He always brought a more practical perspective that came from his ongoing worldwide consulting, which was really a big piece that he brought for 3As. But most of us at 3As did not bring that needed perspective, and it must have seemed for him like pushing a rock uphill sometimes when trying to get members without that view to come around. But Don was persistent. He was our, I think, our Alvin Toffler, if anybody remembers that gentleman. He was like a good futurist. He was always often generally right in the spirit, but not always precisely correct, but usually was heading in the right direction and trying to push everybody in the right direction. I remember at the 1995 American Academy of Advertising meeting in Norfolk, Virginia, I had a couple of papers I was presenting, and Don at that point was already iconic. He had the IMC book out, and people knew it and knew and respected him. And this was before the internet came along and was widely available, and way before there was anything like the internet as a marketing force. And when he pronounced at that 3A's conference that advertising was dead, I can tell you jaws dropped in the audience, but it was prototypical Don as I got to know him over the years. It sparked controversy, which I think Don loved in many ways. In hindsight, of course, Don, the futurist, was generally right that marketing would need to develop new ways to engage with customers, that advertising and sales promotion models, the old model, would need to change. And here we are 25 years later, and we know that traditional advertising and promotion are still important. So he wasn't precisely correct in what he was saying, but he was right in the sentiment in general that we needed to engage more with customers and needed to be more interactive. and integrative. There were central tenets that Don saw, and in his own style, he was just trying to shake us up by saying that advertising was dead. I'll miss the 3A's meetings with Don, talking and hearing Don's vision for 3A's, because his vision was always evolving. He was always learning. He was always traveling. He was always bringing the best of what he heard from people that he was working with around the world. Our academic field is going to miss his practical grasp of where research should be heading and academic programs should be evolving. And just thank you, Don, for being yourself, and may you rest in integrated peace.
Thank you, Marc.
Thank you, Marc. And, you know, if your grandson needs superheroes, again, I'm your man. And we all love your daughter.
Yeah.
Next up, somebody with, I guess, a unique perspective. Not only an alum of the program, but a son of Don Schultz. Jeff, are you out there? Are you with us? Can you say hello to the group?
You need to unmute myself. Hey.
Hey.
I can go live. I don't know if you want to see a picture of me, but I'm in the basement right now because it's cool. I'm in Indianapolis, and yes, unless my older brother is here, I guess I have known Don longer than anyone who is in attendance. But it's been wonderful, and it's just so enjoyable to hear the impact that he had on so many people, how many lives he's touched, not just obviously his intellectual acumen and rigor, but yeah, he was definitely an iconoclast, one of a kind, and a bigger than life presence. And yeah, I actually was one of those students, I guess, in the early 90s, back when it was either direct marketing, advertising and promotion, or PR. So I came to Medill in 89, 90, 91, and did the MS in direct marketing, worked in the industry for about 6 years at Reader's Digest and a couple of other companies before entering on career change to go into pastoral ministry. And in true, I think it was one of the other times that Don was at a loss for words. That was a call to call Don Schultz and say, you know I can do this job, but I'm just not sure it's what I'm passionate about, and I think I'm going in a different direction. And to say totally different field, and didn't know exactly what to expect. He was stunned into silence for a moment. But in true Don Schultz fashion, though, he also said, well, if that's what you want to do, then I'll be glad to support you however I can. That is, much as anything, is what has come through for all the years that I've obviously known and loved my dad, and from all that I'm hearing from you all. Don, Dad, loved to support others to advance what they cared about, and for much of his life, of course, that was around marketing and marketing communications. But what he really cared about, I think, was investing in other people and helping them be the best at what they felt called to do. And it's just a treat to hear that from all of you. And obviously he lives a huge hole in all of our lives, but I'm glad that we have this opportunity to tell the stories and to celebrate Don together. So thank you all, and cheers to all of you. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Jeff, and thanks for sharing your dad with us for all these decades. You know, perhaps there is an analogy that, so, you know, after you did your time in Pleasantville with Reader's Digest, you went into ministry to pay for your sins. And of course, there were all those things that Don did with Keep the Cow. and therefore he went to work for Martin Block to pay for his sins. So it's a generational thing.
Yeah, there's some kind of penance involved there, it sounds like. One way.
Well, as my people would say, your sins are forgiven. That'll be 3 Hail Marys.
Go and sin no more. Yes. Yeah, right.
Now, I'd like to, we have a special guest star who I'd like to come out and call out of the bullpen, much like Eric Clapton would call somebody onto the stage. And I'm calling onto the stage a special guest star, Abe Peck from the left coast. Abe, who are you? Where are you? Tell us your dad.
Well, first of all, Jim, thanks for gathering the tribe, as we say in California. And my name is Abe Peck. I'm a professor emeritus in service right now. When I came to Medill, it was long enough ago that when you heard the word tablet, you associated God and Moses rather than anything electronic. Before I begin, I just want to give Anya a shout out on her new book. And I want to wish Shekar luck in Chennai because I spoke to my son this morning who lives in Lotus Colony. So I know the quarantine is on. But I want to switch over to Heidi because it's also related to my anecdote. Heidi, first of all, everyone's thoughts are with you. And I also want to thank you for participating in what I still maintain was the greatest magazine publishing project in the world. As people may not know that you were our business instructor for some years. So thank you for that. And, everyone's talking about Don being a big guy and a giant and this and that, but ironically, I'm thinking about Yoda because I had a Yoda moment with John, and it wasn't with Don, and it wasn't about IMC, and it wasn't about advertising or direct marketing. It was very particular to Medill and to staffing, and with the magazine publishing project, we were recruiting. This is quite a few years ago. We were recruiting somebody who was a superstar, it was very singular, had a lot of interest outside of his academic unit, terrific, knowledgeable person. Don, I guess, was on the search committee, or he may have just been on the way to the men's room committee in the hall. And he said something to me, and it was a Yoda moment, because he said, "Are you sure this is, and this was the guy for you? Will this guy be a colleague? Will this guy be a colleague, not just to you, because I knew him quite well, but to the school?" And I was very taken by that. And this was a time when, use Eric Clapton kind of thing, blues, advertising / IMC. IMC had just formed, I guess, and journalism were really two trains running in different directions. And I really kind of pondered what Don had said, and ultimately we hired somebody else who just retired, but who gave us 25 wonderful years as a consummate colleague. So I thought that was the kind of advice that someone who really understood education, who understood collegiality, and who I also thought was cheeky, because Don and I consulted a lot and traveled all over the place as this guy did. But he still had the sense of, that you want people to be in the room, and you want people to be, not just to go to every dreary meeting, but to really add value as colleagues. So I just always remembered that moment. It's now 25, 26 years ago. So I just want to thank Don as he's packing for the South Shore of Australia. And Heidi, we will, of course, all wish you well, and to Don.
Thank you, Abe. I'd like next to call on somebody who Don was a fan of and who's been a long-term friend of the program, who carries the burden of being disgustingly smart. It's Rishad Tobaccowala. Rishad, I think 15 years ago, you said something like, everything that's analog will become digital, and everything that becomes digital will become mobile. And it took me a while to let that sink in, but that's just an example of the sort of thinking he brings. So Rishad, you see the world, you have a global perspective. Could you share it with us? Who are you? Where are you? And what's your
Sure. Perfect. So thank you for inviting me, and hello, Heidi and everybody. I'm Rishad Tobaccowala. For many years, I worked at a company called Publicis. I'm still an advisor. I'm now a writer and a speaker and an advisor, generally a starving author. is what I tend to basically read these days. But with that being said, I'm going to basically, I first met Don 25 years ago when some combination of Tom Collinger, Rick Fisdale, and Jerry Reitman invited me to meet this gentleman who basically, as far as I could tell, was insane, okay? And he started saying stuff that made absolutely no sense. Like, for instance, that advertising was dead. And he was at that time at the United States, world's largest advertising agency, at least the United States. And I said, who is this guy? And Rick Fisdale and Tom Collinger basically said, listen to him carefully because what he is saying, we have to try to do. And so that was the first time I actually met him. And from that, I took away one lesson. So I've taken away 3 lessons from him. Many, but these are the 3 key ones. From that one was, how do you tell truth to power? And I have a chapter in my book called The Turd on the Table, which is when everybody is around the table and there's something brown and moist and everyone thinks it's a brownie. Someone's got to say, look, it's a piece of shit. And that was something that he was very good at doing. And he reminded me, even when we were doing the integrated marketing, and we did this whole thing, and we had charts and graphs, and he would occasionally tell me, you know, you're not doing it, but I don't think your company is with your, and he was right. It took us a long time. We lost a lot of opportunities, but he figured that out. So that was sort of like, you know, you have the right people on the boat. So that was one. The second, you know, learning, which is something that was also extremely important, was coming off that comment, which is how difficult change was. And many of his ideas are now being utilized by companies, ideas that he actually first shared, at least I was first exposed to them in 1995, have now become prevalent in 2020. And I think a lot of companies would have been a lot better if they had scaled it up in 2010 or 2008. And it's probably not correct for 1996 because his ideas actually needed a very digital omnichannel world. And what we now have is an omnichannel world in ways that people don't understand, which is just, it's not just analog and digital, and it's not just offline and online, but it's drive-through and pickup. It's real conferences and virtual conferences. And so this entire thing of it being totally mongrel-like, that we're moving from a pure breed world to a mongrel world, is what integrated marketing was all about. And for those who want a politically correct name, it's hybrid. So don't use mongrel, use hybrid. So, you know, so that's the second way of looking at it. But the single, and so I actually also have a chapter in my book called Change Sucks, you know, which is, but he also explained that while change sucks, irrelevance was even worse, and companies that did not participate. And finally, I think the single most important lesson, and I got to see him less over the years, but in the 25 years, anytime I saw him, here was an amazing thing. He was a student. He was perpetually a student. He was asking me questions. He was looking around. I was asking him questions. And he basically showed how important it is for all of us to upgrade our mental operating systems, to continuously to think, to continuously grow up. And I know, Heidi, that, you know, his ashes will be distributed in Australia. But if he had ever been buried, I think the very best line, besides being a potential dog owner or whatever, is what is on Arthur C. Clarke's tomb, which I just Googled to make sure I had it exactly right, which is Arthur C. Clarke, who was also a pioneer, who thought outside the box, 2001, and a whole bunch of other things. And this is what's on his tomb, and this is what I think is what I finally take away from Don, which is he never grew up, but he never stopped growing. Thanks.
Yes, yes, it's very appropriate. I'm writing that down.
He never grew up, but he never stopped growing.
Rishad, that's just great. Thank you so much. Didn't I tell you he was smart?
Oh, yeah.
Well, now let me, if I may, the person whose midterms made you cry, but he still loves you and we still love him, Professor Ed Malthouse.
Can you hear me?
No.
All right. Oh, good, good. All right. So I guess I'd like to share a kind of a side of Don that most of you didn't get to see, which was Don at conferences, which is always fun. So for the past 15 years or so, I've been going to the European Advertising Academy conference, and Don was a strong proponent of that organization and loved the conference. And I always enjoyed hanging out with him there. And so I want to share a couple stories about another senior scholar that I won't mention. I won't mention his name, but Don and this guy didn't see eye to eye on anything. And what was always fun was being in a session when they were there together, and watching them, literally almost come to a fist fight. There were times when I thought I was going to have to call in the bouncers to pull those two guys apart. And what would make it even more funny is this guy is about a foot shorter than Don and maybe 100 pounds lighter, so it wouldn't have been much of a fair fight. But it was, I used to tell all the first time attendees of the conference, if you're in one of those sessions, make sure you bring popcorn because you're going to see quite a show. All right. So I want to kind of share one specific battle between Don and this other unnamed scholar. So we were sitting in on a session, and there was a young PhD student from Japan. This is back when mobile was first coming in, and this Japanese student presented his work, and the other scholar jumped all over him, saying, your scale developed methodology was crap, and here's what you should have done. You should have done this, blah 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 blah. And Don just about exploded. There's one of those is where I was worried he's gonna have a heart attack on this, and he just laid into him, saying, there's a very important message that I'll always remember that comes out of this, which was, Don said, look, this is new technology. We don't know much about it. We need to hear about this. The people from, Japan is far ahead of us in terms of our mobile technology. We should be learning from this. And so, what I took away from this was, asking the right question is probably more important than, dotting your I's and crossing your T's with the methodology. And I think Don was extremely good at asking the right question and thinking about, what is the next thing, and so what if your Cronbach's alpha wasn't so great or whatever. But if you're asking the right question, you're halfway there. So that's something I'll always remember about Don.
Thank you, Ed. We all love you, despite the midterm grades. By the way, now it can be told, it's on a curve, so chill out.
Actually, I don't teach the fall course anymore.
Well, I know that. For years, this was the boot camp of IMC. It was the Paris Island. Gayle Kerr. And Gayle, am I pronouncing your last name properly? Again, from thousands of miles away. Who are you? Where are you? And what's your Don story? Are you with us?
Thanks, Heidi. Hello, everyone. I'm Gayle Kerr from Brisbane here in Australia. I knew Don as an adjunct professor at my university, QUT, where he and Heidi visited us for almost 2 decades. Don was also proud to be our first ever fellow of the Australia and New Zealand Academy of Advertising. I'm not sure if everyone knows, but we adopted Don as an Australian. You see, Australia's preeminent historian, Manning Clarke, sums up the Australian larrikin as someone who loves, and I quote, mocking pomposity and smugness, cutting down tall poppies, who is larger than life, skeptical, egalitarian, yet suffers fools badly, and above all is defiant. That to me was the essence of Don. I remember the first time I met him at QUT in 2004. He'd just examined my PhD thesis and asked me if I was feeling more intelligent now. He had to be Australian. I laughed, and I continued to laugh with Don as he continued to surprise me across the next 16 years. You know, his incredible academic insights, his enthusiasm, his speed as a co-author in research, and his presence and his persuasion as a speaker. You know, Don would come to QUT and change our students' thinking. They loved his willingness to challenge the conventional, but also his generosity to share his ideas, to share his time, and to make them feel very special. Because Don was a giant in the academic world, but as big as he was in intellect and in stature, his heart was even bigger. Don was kind and generous and always willing to share his time, his ideas, and always, always a drink. So I'd say to Don, she'll be right, mate. You made a huge impact on our hearts and our minds, and you'll never be forgotten. And thanks for coming back to Australia.
And Gayle, thank you so much, and especially across the thousands of miles. You are the furthest continent from us, I think. But you're close in our hearts. And since you're going to be the guardian of Don's final resting place, please take good care of our guy. Next up, an IMC alum, or I guess he might have been an MSA alum, who I got to know as an alum, but then as an author, not just an author, a cartoonist in the New Yorker, the big leagues, as well as an academic, sure, and you know, marketer, sure. So he's written a couple of books that I actually give to a lot of people, including Kvetch's Kvetch Ken, one of his cartoon books, and a really interesting book about Hannah Arendt. But that's for another day. But check it out on Amazon. Ken Krimstein, are you with us? Who are you? Where are you? And can you tell us the Don story?
Hi, Jim. Yeah, I'm in Evanston. Ever hear of it?
The People's Republic.
Yeah, I used to be in New York, and thank you. I must say I love the way you pronounce the title of that first book, Kvetch as Kvetch. You're the only person who can turn that into a 4-syllable.
I'm Irish. It's like Don. You know, when he got mad and he'd add more syllables? Well, you know, help me out.
So, when Jim reached out to ask me to talk about Don, I was honored. But I had one question. How could I possibly fit everything I had to say into 30 minutes? And then I took another look at the brief, and I saw that Jim said 3 minutes. Count people. Don Schultz was the smartest person I've ever met in my life. All I had to do was talk to him for 20 seconds, and I was 2 years smarter. I'll confess, I did not quite know what I was in for when I walked into Fisk Hall, and Professor Schultz's towering frame leaned into that first class and started speaking in this laconic Oklahoma accent. This completely took me off guard. But 20 seconds later, I began my transformation from a very scruffy Grinnell College history major to whatever I am today. Over the years, Don and I would connect. A meal, a drink, a phone call, and it was always at just the right time. We'd be sparring constantly about the relative merits of creative versus strategy. And now that I know more about that, but seriously, there was so much more that we would talk about, and I can still hear him saying, well, Ken, there's this little thing called brand value. Or he'd say, well, Ken, there's this little thing called the internet. Or he'd say, well, Ken, there's this little thing. And it was always what was going to be the next big thing. And, you know, we'd be in New York or in Hong Kong, where I was working for a while, or in London or in Chicago. And he'd always find time to meet me. And he'd usually be saying something like, oh, you know, I just came from speaking to the board of Omnicom, you know, or I just came from the executives of Publicis, you know, and I told them, ladies and gentlemen, there's this little thing called, you know. So we'd sit there and we'd have a drink and we'd talk. And right now I can say, Don, you win. Strategy is the most creative thing there is in the communication business. I did not know that at the time, but your insight made me the creative director that I became. at Ogilvy and in New York and Hong Kong, and my own shop, and now as a teacher at DePaul and as an author. You know, as I teach, I try to be 1/10 what you were. So Don, there's a billion things that I learned from you, and sadly a billion more that I won't be able to. Suffice it to say, there's this little thing called my life and your impact on it, and thank you.
Ken, thank you. That's great. You speak for a lot of us. In, you know, 2-minute conversation, 2 years smarter. I'd next, if I may, like to call on my bad. Call on Beth Barnes, friend of the program, academic, was with us, went to Syracuse, was with Kentucky. Do I have that right, Beth? Who are you? Where are you? Can you tell us your story? Do I have her? Have I messed this up?
I think I.
There you are.
Yay, okay, thank you. So Penn State on the way from Northwestern to Syracuse. But anyway, I was actually in
you go across Route 80 and there it is. Yeah.
It's in there. I was in the master's program with Ken, so it's great to see him again. And then I came back to Northwest. Well, Don actually brought me back then to work with him when he was doing some work for Nestle. And I did that for about 9 months and then went back, left the Chicago area, but I went back to Northwestern in 1986 to work on my PhD. And that was over in communication studies, but Medill was funding me and I was working really closely with Don, a little bit with Martin. Anyway, I'm not, if I get started, I have way too much to say. So I'm just going to talk about one aspect of Don in particular that a couple of people have touched on, but it's one of the things among many, many things about him that really sticks out to me. I had the great good fortune to travel with Don some. I was counting earlier today, and I got to go to 3 continents either with him or because of him. And I have continued to do a lot of traveling in my career. I am a professor in the Integrated Strategic Communication Program. Our business school won't let us use marketing at Kentucky. And actually, one of the things when Ken and I were together at Medill, I think we were the first class to have a sales promotion course, if I remember, at least that's what I remember them telling us. And I still teach sales promotion today. So there you go. But, you know, when you traveled with Don, he was definitely not the kind of person who just went to speak at the conference. He would make a point of getting out of the hotel and learning as much as he could about the area and getting out and talking to people because he was just interested in so many things. And one of my absolute favorite memories is, I'm pretty sure I have the timing right on this. I think it was the fall of 2000. I was teaching in London that semester for Syracuse, and Don was over in London for a conference or a consulting job, something like that. And we got together to go out for dinner, but first we walked. And of course, London's a great place for doing that. And at the time, he was in the process of rereading Dickens. I don't know if he did that multiple times, Heidi, or not, but he was rereading Dickens right then. And so not only were we strolling the streets of London together, and I'm luckily relatively tall, so I can more or less keep up, but he was talking about Dickens as we walked past places. And it was just such a Don moment to me, because again, he knew so much about so many things, but as a couple of people said, he was always trying to learn more as well. And Heidi and I were talking just a few days before Don passed away, and one of the things she was sharing with me from him was that he thought that I maybe inherited his love of travel, and he sure helped to burnish the love of travel that was already in me. I am one of the many people on here, I would not be in the job that I'm in. I would not have had the career that I've had if it wasn't for Don. I hear his voice in my head all the time, and it's just great to be part of this. And Heidi and Don got married the year that I was in the program. So Heidi and I have known each other almost as long as Don and I knew each other. And it's a treasured friendship. And I just want to say, I am drinking an Australian Shiraz for you guys. So thank you all so much. I appreciate it.
I will say, Don always considered Beth to be the daughter that he never had. So they were very close.
Yeah, and that is a great privilege in my life. So. Good to see my brother Jeff on here.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you so much for that. And next, an alum who's gone on to do a few other things. Auto repairs, is that what you were doing? Making hamburgers? Jose Costa, who are you? Where are you? What are you doing? Tell us your Don story.
Thank you, Jim.
Hello, Jose.
Hey, Heidi, how are you?
Oh, I'm good.
I had my 3 kids here. I was ready, and then I realized I didn't change my name, so they didn't know I was here. So I lost all 3 kids. I had this very thoughtful, I was going to talk about them being Don's legacy, because I actually met my wife at IMC. And if it wasn't for Don and Heidi, I guess I wouldn't be married, I wouldn't have kids, and I wouldn't be here today. So you hold a special place in my heart, Heidi and Don. And I know we'll continue his legacy as we continue to go through life. But I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina. Jim is right. I progressed through automotive and restaurants and optical retail. And I got to first know Don through his writing and his work in Venezuela. My father founded the IMC program back home in the 90s. And it became the largest IMC program, and it was all based on Don's and Heidi's work. And I was a student of that program, and my thesis was basically using all of Don's and Heidi's materials. And I applied for the program with my sister back in 2002. And coincidentally, both of us got accepted. And that's how we came to Evanston and Northwestern. And a couple days into the program, I met my wife, and we've been married for over a decade now. And there's a couple memories I have of my time with Don, Heidi. One of them was a dinner at Jackie's Bistro, right across Cindy's apartment. And we always went back for recruiting to get more talent. And just the way he pushed my thinking, his ideas, his inspiration, I think I take it with me every single day. I had the opportunity to do an MBA at University of Chicago, and I always compare the two of them, and he was absolutely right, 100%, that IMC is so special and so unique, and it doesn't compare at all. It really makes you different in a boardroom, at the C-suite, and it's all because of the hard work that he put through so many years of building the program and his legacy. So all I can say is I love him. I love you, Heidi, and thank you.
I wanted to say, for those of you who don't know Jose, 2 years ago, he was named in 2018 one of Medill's distinguished alums. And this was shortly after, like literally just a few weeks after Don had become ill enough that he had to be on oxygen and on a tank and all of that. And there was this big dinner to honor the awardees. And you know, Jose had asked for, he was given a choice of some faculty people he would like to be there. And he had mentioned Don and myself. And Don couldn't go because he was just so new having the oxygen, and it was just brand new. And he was always so sorry that he couldn't attend that, but he was so proud of you.
He sent me an email, and I still have that email. Yep, I read it quite often. Yep.
And it turns out that sometimes, if you're very lucky, a hidden benefit of attending our program is that you can meet people as fabulous as Jose's wife, Cindy.
Yeah.
who may be too good for him. He's quite good, but she may still be too
I
good.
definitely married up, Jim.
Hey, they were in the back of my classroom, and it didn't take me too long to figure out there was something going on between them. Kind of steamy in the back of the room there.
A lot gets lost when you're teaching on Zoom.
Yes.
Next up, a friend of the program who told me, you know, when I saw her just a few, I guess it was a couple of years ago at this point, about her days with us as a student and how she was afraid of Don, and then she got to meet him. Has a tremendous career and has gone on from there. Jeannie Caggiano, are you with us? Who are you? Where are you? And tell us your Don story.
So I'm Jeannie Caggiano. I am actually about 6 minutes north of Northwestern at the moment. I got the Kleenex going. I got the rosé going. Life is good. I was Jean Lindbergh when I was at Medill, and I am now an EVP and Executive Creative Director at Leo Burnett, where I've been for 37 years, one of those rare Medill creatives ever since Kent helped me get hired after I graduated. I worked with Judy Franks there, I see you on here, and Rishad as well. So on the day after Don Schultz died, I didn't know yet that he had. I was quoting him to the C-suite of some of my Fortune 7 clients. Who cares? The first time I ever presented creative in the summer of 1982, and I thought I'd done real well, he roared that at me. It was either Mountain Valley Water or Urbach's Bouillon. It was so boring, but I couldn't wait till we get to something more interesting, you know, like one of the hot accounts, like, you know, McDonald's, Coca-Cola, or Disney. No, we never got there. I would later create work for all of those brands, but Don's boring assignments were what actually taught me to think. I was 5 years at Northwestern, and it only took those 2 words. Who cares? I still roar it in my best imitation of Don at my clients and my teams. It makes them stop and realize that maybe that thing they're so proud of, nobody really cares about. Although you can if you try. So anyway, during that meeting, the day after Don died, the client's highly paid Washington, D.C. consultant started chuckling. He later texted me that he'd been telling them the same thing for 10 years. And I'd finally gotten through. Well, actually, Don had. A big part of my success, honestly, I really chalk up to the fact that Don Schultz taught me to think. He taught me that no matter how boring something looks, whether it's Allstate or Pfizer or United Healthcare, there is something in every brand that people will care about if only you can unlock it. I am sometimes told that I am now a big deal. I never feel that way. When I was at Medill, I was an uncertain, shy, dirt poor girl. Don didn't see any of that. He saw talent, I guess. Or in some folks he didn't. And to him, that was all that mattered. And thank God he saw something in me and made me believe I could actually do this. And once I got past Don's stentorian roar, I realized he was actually kind of a 6-foot+ teddy bear. After I graduated, he had me and Dave Casey, who was another student from our year, come speak to a class. And afterwards, he and Heidi, hi Heidi, you guys took us to dinner somewhere in Lincoln Park to thank us. And I remember looking at the menu and being absolutely horrified by the prices. I thought we were going Dutch. So I made about $16,000. I know, I made exactly $16,500 as a junior copywriter at Leo Burnett. And all I could afford was an appetizer, which was the artichoke. And he pressed me to order more, and I'm like, no, I'm not really hungry. And he finally figured it out, and he goes, well, if I were you, I'd order a steak because I'm paying. And he said it loud enough for the whole restaurant to turn around and look. And I was mortified, but I was kind of hungry. But I figured that you guys, you know, you couldn't really afford a steak. So I ordered the hamburger. So to Don.
To Don.
Jeannie, so now all of you understand how sweet little Jean Lindbergh, our student who's scared by Don, became and deserves to be Jeannie Caggiano, a certified BFD. So,
you say so, Jim. I never feel like it.
Well, that's part of the secret. So thank you for that. Next up, one of our alums, actually the first alum, I think, in the downtown program, make me smart about this, who for a long time had a job I did not envy, which was being the person who got to talk to the microphones when bad things were happening. Al Cubbage, are you with us? Who are you? Where are you? And what's your Don story? we have him?
He's here.
Oh. Well, is he paying attention to me? That would be a break.
There we go. You didn't unmute me.
There you go. Hey, Al.
It made it a little tough when you had me muted, although I understand that many people prefer to have me muted for many, many years. So I understand your instinct for doing that. I'm Al Cubbage. I am a graduate of the night program, the evening program of the Master of Science in Advertising program. And for more than 20 years, I was Northwestern's Vice President for University Relations. In that role, I was in charge of all the university's internal and external communications, basically the web, alumni magazine, media relations, everything. So I was as Jim pointed out, the guy that when things went wrong, they wheeled me out to explain how there was really nothing to see here, just move along and, there's nothing going on. But basically, my experience with Don was truly terrific and continued to be for many years in different ways. I was in 1986, the fall, at the end of that first quarter of the first, it was brand new, a part-time master's in advertising. I walked out of the final exam in Don Schultz's marketing class, fully expecting a call the next day from Medill telling me that there had been a horrible mistake and that anyone who failed that exam as badly as I did should never have been admitted to the program in the first place. Throughout the quarter in Don's class, I would hand in what I thought were really brilliant case study analyses, only to have them returned to me promptly. I give Don that, awash in purple ink. And they, my conclusions were bad, my assumptions were bad, my reasoning was bad, my strategies were bad. And then we got to the final, and the second question on the exam was some marketing formula with a lot of math that totally stumped me. And so I agonized over it, spent too much time on it. And I thought, well, that's it. I'm done here. They're never going to let me continue. And I would point out, I sent this to Heidi in advance, but, I later went on and got a law degree and also, passed the bar exam. But of all my academic nightmares, those ones where you wake up in the middle of the night, Don Schultz's marketing exam is still my chief academic nightmare. It was the one. But I somehow managed to pass it, I guess, and then I eventually got the master's in advertising. And that was a lot of fun. We were, people who worked full-time, 20-something, 30-somethings, did it at night in the old unrenovated Wiebold Hall. The classrooms were truly abysmal. And, we learned things from Don and Stan Tannenbaum and Martin Block and others. And, the good thing was, honestly, from all those Medill professors, but especially from Don, those of us who were working full-time were able to put to use the next day in our jobs those things that we learned in the classroom the night before. Everything I learned in those classes, particularly Don's, was relevant to me in my work then and continued to be relevant to me throughout my entire career. So Don was a terrific teacher. He was also very much a mentor to me. So shortly after I graduated from the program, I was offered a job as the marketing director for Drake University in Des Moines, which is how I got into higher ed. And I asked Don for his advice. And then 8 years later, I was nominated for the job as Vice President of Communications, Vice President of Union Relations at Northwestern. And I asked Don if he would be a reference for me. But the first thing I did is I asked him, I said, Don, have you aggravated the administration any more than is normal? Because if so, I'm not going to use you as a reference. But if it's just your normal aggravating the administration, I'll be glad, I would like to put you down. And he assured me that, he was in relatively good graces, at least at that particular moment. And then, in all my time as vice president, I continued to seek Don's counsel, and it was valuable, it was helpful. So finally, someone who now teaches in Medill's IMC program, the undergraduate, the certificate program, and I continue to be very much influenced by Don, his teaching methods, his teaching style, even though I know it's inimitable. Don he truly was one of a kind. So, he taught me what it's like, or taught me what it means to truly be a teacher. And I treasure that. So I owe Don thanks and probably royalties for his teaching. And I certainly am proud to be continuing what Don did for many, many years. So I'm retired now, but nevertheless, I continue to value and treasure my experience with Don.
Thanks, Al. That's great. And thanks for that perspective. When Al retired from his job of vice president of When Things Go Wrong, they took away from him his university issued beeper. And Al still has some phantom limb issues.
Very much so, I'm afraid. You don't get the, I miss those 3 a.m. phone calls telling me that something has gone wrong. And could I please be over at the Arch at 5 a.m. to talk to the TV trucks?
Live long and prosper, Al.
Thanks very much.
Next up, a professor and a practitioner, an academic, and a friend, Judy Franks, who had a great author relationship with Don. Judy, are you there? Who are you? Where are you? And what's your Don story?
I am. So, hi everyone. I'm Judy Franks, and it's good to see some friendly faces. I joined Northwestern in 2008 following a long agency career. I had started my career at Leo Burnett, and my true love has always been school, and I had the opportunity to go back to school, so here I am. I need to start off by first apologizing to Jim Carey, because when he got a hold of me to let me know that Don had passed, I called him back and was sobbing like a baby. And we knew this was coming, but times were tough, and I have to admit, I thought it was kind of unfair that we lost the giant who looked out for all of us when the world was crashing around us. That was a tough one. So Jim, thank you for dealing with my blubbering. And Heidi, thank you for welcoming me into your home before the lockdown hit. You have no idea what it means to me that I got to visit with Don. As Jim had mentioned, I joined the faculty coming from a 23-year agency career, and I wanted to write. I wanted to get a book out there about what the media world was really like, from what I saw as a practitioner in the agency world and where I thought it could go. And Don took me under my wing, and my little book that could, Media from Chaos to Clarity, is now on the 2nd edition, and it is so meaningful to me that Don wrote the forewords to both editions of the book. And when I was getting ready to write the 2nd edition, I met with Don and I said, it's time. The book was first published in 2011, and obviously everyone on this Zoom meeting knows that the media world had radically changed. This was back in 2018. I said, it's time for me to write another edition. What do you think? And he looked at me and he said, are you willing to throw the first edition away and start from scratch? And I looked at him and I said, yeah, I think I am. And he challenged me to start from scratch and don't hang on to the past and see where I would land. And he talked about that in the foreword, and it was incredibly meaningful to me because you know what, you guys? He would do that to his own work. People didn't even understand what he was talking about, and he would go and blow it up and be on to the next thing because he felt it was important to constantly be putting new thinking out there. I have the last email from Don. I save all my emails from Don. This one's dated March 20th, and I'm working on another piece of research with Vijay Viswanathan, and it looks like it's finally going to go out the door next week. But I was struggling with how to articulate the idea in a way that would really resonate. And so thanks to Don, I had the courage to throw my draft away and start over again. And I want to share with you what Don wrote to me. He wrote, hi, Judy. All authors fall in love with their work. It takes a dedicated person to recognize an ugly baby when they develop one. I admire the new approach you and Vijay are considering and believe it gets much closer to what you are trying to accomplish. Even with this acknowledgement of the previous challenges, I have trouble with the revision. And that was okay, because I knew that that was the inspiration that I needed to go back and get it right. Don never stopped trying to go back and get it right. And I think one of the greatest honors to his memory that we can all do, and one of my fondest memories of Don and his sidekick Martin would wreak havoc in IMC faculty meetings. And I was this new kid coming to faculty meetings, and regardless of who was leading the department at the time, whether it was Tom Collenter or Frank Mulhern or VJ, they would throw bombs into the meeting and just watch things blow up and snigger. And when I first came to these faculty meetings, I was kind of shocked because it didn't have the decorum that I was used to from a client meeting in the agency world where, God forbid, the last thing you're ever going to do is blow up something that management is saying, right? And they would just lob stuff out there all the time. And once I got used to it, I realized that he was doing it to provoke us and make us better. And one of the challenges that I have for all of us as we have to move on, living up to Don's memory, is we owe it to him and we owe it to ourselves to keep that spunk alive in the IMC department at Medill and to be willing to constantly blow up our ideas in those faculty meetings so that we can get to that better place in his memory. So thank you, Don. I will be forever in debt. Heidi, to our continued friendship. And Jim, thank you for allowing me to bawl my eyes out on the phone with you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Judy. You're just wonderful. In fact, if I can share it, Judy, in the conversation that we had the morning after Don died, Judy remarked that Don would always throw rocks at his own work, and I cleverly responded, I thought that was my job. But one of the things, and also just building on what you just referenced, there are two things that made you decide whether or not to go to a faculty meeting. One was the quality of the food, and the second was how easy it was to throw. So, of course, I'm no longer invited to faculty meetings, and everybody is happier. I'd like to go next to a quarterfinalist in the quarantine beard growing contest. He's in the bracket with Frank Mulhern. We'll have to see how that turns out. But an alumni who's been a great friend of the program since, and importantly, an Okie. Jerry Dow, are you out there?
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you very much, Jim. And it's
that's a Willie Nelson. That looks good.
Yeah, my printer ran out of ink. I don't know why it turned out this way, but it did. But it's good to see people like Ed and Rishad and Martin and Kent Middleton and Mark Davis and Beth. I have not seen you in forever, and it is so nice to see you. I was hoping you would be on here, so it's great to see everybody. And I expected to learn a lot. One of the things I learned was how to spell Heidi's name. I always thought it was Heidi. Heidi Schultz is how I always heard it pronounced. So anyway, that's a good thing. It's nice to see you, Heidi. Very nice. And Jeff, it was nice to hear from you as well. A couple of the references I was going to use to make everybody remember have already been used, right? The purple Sharpie, I remember one time Don said, I had to stop grading your paper when my Sharpie ran out of purple ink. So I knew I was in trouble. And I also wanted to reference what Gene said, that I remembered that he often said to me, but he would always say, Dow, who cares? And, I knew that it was not going to end well when he started the conversation that way. But I am from Oklahoma. And here's proof that Don and I were there at one time in Northwestern. And Oklahoma, as many of you may know, is a good place to be from, but not a good place to stay. They just don't let a lot of us out of that state. And Heidi, I would love to hear what you thought, Don thought about Oklahoma. But I am certainly proud of the way I grew up there, and I had a lot of similarities in my background. I think Don grew up in Wowoka, and he went to Seminole High School. And for those of you who don't know, Wowoka is just east of Bowlegs, Oklahoma, which is a very nice town. Anyway, I had Don as my professor. Like, you know, he was not a visiting dignitary. He was my professor for both marketing 1 and 2. And I remember so much from his classes, but I won't talk about that. What I will say is, you know, when I got accepted into the program, Todd Townsend, who is probably on the call as well, set up a meeting with Don and I at Sherman's Snack Shop, which was a lovely place there in Evanston. And, you know, I thought, you know, this is great. Don Schultz, one of the professors, is going to have lunch with us. And Don came in and he sat down. And the first thing he said was, you know, it's nice to meet you, Gerry, but I just want to let you know, we haven't had very good luck with people from Oklahoma up here. And I thought, oh no, this is not going to end well for me. But I will say in closing, and then I'll render back my minutes to the speaker. But the thing I remember most about Don is many years later, I was having lunch, I think with Ed and probably Tom Collinger in the cafeteria there at Northwestern. And Don walked in with, you know, a bunch of people in suits. They looked like they were very important. And I looked up and I said, hi, Don. And he could have cared less who was with him and who was around him. And he came up to me and shook my hand and gave me the biggest smile and was so glad to see me. And that meant a lot. And I think Don meant a lot to a lot of people who are on the phone today. He always made you feel great, and he always made you feel important. And as I think about the people in my life who have made a difference, I certainly count him as one of them. So to everybody, I just want to say I am a better person for having Don in my life. And I am honored to be able to say a few words. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you, Gerry. And I'm picking you against Mulhern. I'm going to give the points. I don't care what they say. So thank you. Next up, again, another longtime friend of the program, a leader in the business-to-business marketing community, and somebody who really understands the relationship of IMC to that half of the world's economy where businesses sell to other businesses. And perhaps a late entry into the talent pool, although this is not a quarantine beard, but nonetheless another beard. It's kind of a cliche, Gerry. Gary Slack. Are you out there? Who are you? Where are you? And what's your Don story?
I don't know. Is he on?
Charlie, is he lit up?
So to speak.
So let's go to Kelly. Kelly F. That's Gary's wife. That's the account that they're using. They don't have video, but they do have audio. So Kelly, I think I've unmuted you. Could you go ahead and unmute yourself and jump in if you could?
Gary has a 2400 baud modem on Prodigy. Okay. Gary, are you there? Okay.
Just one more sec. Just unmuting them. I think they're having a little difficulty with the mute button here.
Guys, Gary, we love you, but we're going to be back. Okay. So Charlie, you could take Charlie is one of our alums working with us in tech support. Can we go forward to John Christensen?
Hi, can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Oh, perfect. Hi, Heidi, how are you doing? Good to see you.
Hey, John.
I want to be where you are.
Yep.
Okay,
I
come on
wanna be
over.
Where you are,
Oh.
yes.
Yes. Without Don Schultz, John would be working in a 7-Eleven, and look at him now.
Probably McDonald's.
I don't think so.
Pretty soon I will be anyway. So, thank you guys. Jim, thanks for doing such a great job on this, and Heidi, so nice to see you, sweetheart. My heart goes to you. I'll see you soon, I hope. Anyway, without thinking about Don, it's an awful lot of optimism. He had optimism in individuals, and he certainly had optimism, maybe not of me as an individual, but everybody he ran into, he had optimism. He saw the best in him. He saw what could happen rather than maybe something negative or just another person or whatever. He treated them as individuals and just very, very optimistic, and just saw the light that could come from individuals if he just got certain points through to him. And a lot of it's rubbed off in me and my businesses and so forth and so on. And he had an amazing level of patience. I mean, you guys recognize that? Huge patience. I mean, how many times do you think he said, "What's the benefit?" in the classes over that year? My goodness, probably 10,000 times, but probably around 999, maybe somewhere around 1,700 or so. I started to get it. Then like around 8,000 or so times of him. What's the benefit in the incarnations of this? I really got it, but if it wasn't for his optimism, just sense that's, a dumb old guy with no money like me would get it, it's just, I wouldn't have got it. And it's a unique understanding. It's extraordinarily important, and it's very life-changing. I'm telling you, it's just a benefit, after I got out of Northwestern and IMC, I went off and started my own business and ended up running about 2,000 dental offices in like 7 or 8 countries now. We centrally manage them on digital things and so forth and so on. But early on, there's no way in the world I could have imagined, but I was going, wait a minute, I put together great advertising for these guys, and they just, 5 guys are growing tenfold, and the other 5 were not growing at all. Well, what's the variables? And I kept digging into these internal, what we all look at now as being integrated variables, and kept altering them and quantifying them as best as I possibly could. But this is before I could afford a phone call to Don, or a phone call to Shekar, my dear buddy from undergraduate who had to go to sleep. He apologizes because it's like middle of the night and his mom died 2 days ago, and he just drove across India last night. He drove across India last night because they shut the airplanes down.
I didn't know his mother passed away.
His mom passed away the other night. Yeah, so they shut down the airports, Heidi, and they had to drive across the country to Chennai from Mumbai. So it's crazy. But anyway, he and I, we owe our lives to this gentleman. What the heck? How fortunate could we have been? So, without knowing it, not being able to communicate, a lot of the things I had to do to survive as a business is kind of what Don was figuring out he had to do too at the same time, which is make sure all these processes were integrated and optimized and so forth. And so when I finally had the wherewithal to hang out with Don a little bit afterwards, go, whoa, my goodness, because I thought it was kind of on the Mars for this stuff, and Don was just flies everything for me. It's phenomenal. It's just this phenomenal. It's such a godsend and so much fun. And he came out to the company and he goes, this is a vertical marketing firm. What are you talking about? This is vertical marketing. You only work with one industry and that's it. And it is kind of a cool deal to be able to only work with one industry. And I think it was kind of exciting for him to come out to the company, Heidi, don't you think? And, because, he should be proud of it, because basically it's not my company, it's his company. And that's, that's the deal. It's his company. So, occasionally we got to speak alongside of him at the schools and so forth. But, and I, which is what an honor to know him, but then speak alongside him. My goodness. And now, I have to basically give IMC courses to not only my staff. I have to give one tomorrow, by the way, with COVID-19 spacing, of course, and our gardens of our company outside. No, maybe we'll put masks on, maybe we won't. I'm not sure, but all we're doing is perpetuating this whole deal. But all came from Don, and none of us would be here if it wasn't for Don. And it's just, and Shekar and I say the exact same things, both of us. And Jim, this. We have a lot to thankful. So we're gonna carry the torch forward, have some fun, and maybe have a glass of wine here or there in his honor multiple times over the next decade or two. So good to see you all. Thanks.
John, thank you. And thank you so much. And, you know, it's just another opportunity for us all to reflect on, we wouldn't know each other without Don. I mean, look at this community. Look at these spectacular, talented, generous, kind people who are smart. And without Don, we wouldn't know each other. So,
smart.
Wow, something. Oh, and by the way, just, you know, a little bit of an epilogue to the story. So John's company has been acting as a sponsor for IMC summer projects. Folks who were here before, we now don't do it on an individual basis, we do it on a team basis. And there's the academic supervisor of the summer team project for John's company this year is me. So I love it. I love it when a plan comes together.
Yeah.
So next up, special guest star, Daniel Schultz, whose name rings a bell. Are you out there? Can you say hi to us all? Tell us if this Schultz name is a coincidence.
Yeah. No, I intuited that. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can. You look tall and lean.
Yeah. Yeah, not quite the same exact traits as Grandpa Don, but I got the tall part. So
tell us your story.
I guess the reason I kind of wanted to share, hi Grandma Heidi, by the way, and hey Beth Barnes, I see your chat, is because it's really neat for me to hear all these stories. Growing up as a kid, you know, we hear the Don, and we always had these fun, jovial ways of greeting Grandpa Don, as I call him, but Don to you all. And it's really neat and surreal to see really the fruits of his labor and his life and what he's produced in the effect that it has on all of you. And it's been really cool to just hear those stories, the impact that he's had on all of your lives. Because when I was younger, and even now still, I always looked up to him. I am about to graduate from Ball State here in December with a degree in professional selling and business administration. And he joked with me a bit. He said, "Oh, come on, you're going to get a degree in sales." But I always felt pushed by him to be better and to learn. I love that quote that was mentioned earlier, that he never grew up himself, but always wanted to grow. And I think that that's something that I'm trying to have as a personal goal to follow in along. Just a recent trip I took up with my fiance to Chicago to see Grandma Heidi, and Grandma Heidi leaned over to her and said, "He's a lot like Don. This is what you're getting. It's not going to change." So it's been really cool for me to just think of how similar I am. I see a lot of myself in him, or a lot of himself in me, I suppose. And so it was really sad to lose Grandpa Don, but I'm really excited to see what the future will bring, knowing that I have a little bit of that blood in me. Who knows, maybe I'll live up to just a fraction of the standard and the bar that he set. But like I said, it's been really cool to hear some of the stories that you all have and the memories that you have with him, because the relationship are just so vastly different. You know, myself being a relative and being so much younger, and then getting to see what he's been able to do for all of you, and how afraid of him some of you were. So that's always cool, because I never really got scared of him. We always had to make sure up around Grandpa Don and Grandma Heidi, but it's been really neat to hear those stories from you. So I just wanted to say thank you for sharing, and I'm glad that I've been able to have a part in his life as well, and I look forward to continuing to be there for you, Grandma Heidi, and hopefully I'll get to meet some of you, of his friends, in the future, possibly.
Thank you, Daniel. Proud of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. That was great. And everybody else, we're going to start calling her Grandma Heidi. Deal with it.
The next one who does is going to walk on stumps.
Now,
Grandma Heidi's the one you got to be afraid of.
No one else.
Now, I should say, is probably 15 years ago when I started calling him the Don. And, you know, there are three different ways to interpret that. One was the Dons are the distinguished professors of Oxford and Cambridge. Not bad. Secondly, there are the Dons of the Corleones, which had some relevance in faculty meetings. And third, and this was back when it was funny, one of the president's odd-numbered wives used to refer to him as the Donald. So we truncated that for Oklahoma and called him the Don. So it seemed to be a multi-purpose name. I'd now like to call on a friend, a professional colleague, an author, a former teacher in the program, somebody who is pushing out books at a Don Schultz-like rate. Ron Jacobs, are you with us? Who are you? Where are you? And what's your Don story?
I think I'm there now. Yes, thank you.
I think you're there too.
Am I? Good.
You're up.
All right. So I was involved with Don and met Don right at the time that the direct marketing program was being created at Northwestern. And I got to know Don in a very special way. It became the IMC program. But I also had a little overlap. So I have an agency, Jacobs and Clevenger. We had a special knowledge in publishing. And we had a publishing client, brand new client, Chicago Magazine. And I have a love of travel. Don and I share a lot of these same things. Love of travel. My daughter went to the IMC program. His son went. Both of us are bad tourists, but great travelers. We like to get out and see places. I have a second career. This is my second career. My first was working for an airline. I lived in Hawaii for a few years. And I had this opportunity to work with Chicago Magazine. And one day, my client at Chicago Magazine, I think it was our second meeting actually, mentioned that her husband was going to China. Well, I had been to China in 1982, and I knew a little about that. And I said, well, that's great. What does your husband do that he's going to China? And she said, oh, he's a professor at Northwestern. And somehow I had sort of not connected the dots that Heidi Schultz and Don Schultz were married. I connected the dots awful quickly. Not too long after that, we found ourselves at a conference in Hawaii. And yeah. And we were in Hawaii, and I wanted to show Don and Heidi a great time, take them to a place they wouldn't have gone otherwise. And for sure they would not have gone otherwise. A place called Haiku Gardens, which is up on the island of Oahu, but up in the mountains. And if you've been to Hawaii, you know that along the ocean, it maybe rains 1 inch a year. But up in the mountains, it rains almost every night. So we went to dinner at Haiku Gardens, Don, Heidi, my wife Penny, and I. And I had rented for this occasion, actually for the whole week, I had rented a Subaru Samurai. Now this is a little four-wheel drive car. It has a rag top that has little turnbuckles to hold it down, and but no top over the back. And Heidi was in a dress, Penny was in a dress. They kind of climbed over us to get into the back seat. Don got in, his knees were about here, and he said, "Who makes this and why?" Which, true. We go up to dinner, we have a wonderful dinner, and we come out, and it starts raining. And it's pouring. But I quickly learned if I just drove that Subaru Samurai faster, they would get less wet in the back seat. Don, still with his knees under his chin, But as I drove faster, the top started to pop. And now Don has his arm holding the top with his arm down while I'm driving fast, and they're getting drenched in the back seat. What a memorable dinner. And what a great time I showed a client and a good friend.
And here we are all these years later. Nobody got pneumonia.
No.
Nobody lost an account.
Nobody lost an account. It was all great.
And we're laughing about it.
And you know, Don also had this way. He and I would speak at a lot of conferences together, and both educational and marketing conferences. And whenever we would speak together, we would be discussants at these academic conferences. And after he picked apart the writers of the papers, he would then wait until I said something, and then he would ask me one of those Don questions that would force me to stop and actually have to think beyond what I had just said about whatever that paper was written. And I won't forget that. Gosh, I'm gonna miss Don.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you for sharing that story.
Ron, thank you. You see, you take 86 and a half years and you spread it across 7 continents and 4,000 people. Boy, are there stories.
Oh, there's stories.
Yeah, so, yeah, and we're just touching the tip of the iceberg. But next, let me call on a twofer and a 5-tool player. A twofer because he was both a student and he's with us now as an academic and colleague. And a 5-tool player, somebody who is one of, well, if we were to have an all-star team of the baseball talent of the 4,000 people, Gerry would be on it. Gerry Chiaro, are you there? Who are you? Where are you? And what's your Don story?
Thank you so much, Jim. The Don stories could go on forever, but I want to start. Yes, I was one of those creative students of Don, and I don't know if any of you have kept his graded papers, but I have a bunch of them downstairs, and when I kind of need a kick in the head, I'll go take a look and read through and realize, like, what the hell was I doing back then? Because I'd get the 6 or the 7 and all the purple ink and everything else. Certainly I did not go into the creative side of things. I want to take it back to September of 1983, certainly one of the great months of my life. It's when I met Don Schultz. It's when I met my wife, who was on here for a while, but she's out in Whidbey Island with her family celebrating her brother's birthday. So, Mary, I don't think you came back, but met my wife, and my White Sox, Jim, won the American League West as well. So it was quite a month. I just wanted to share a couple things. When I was thinking about Don, 2 words really came to mind: vision and fight. Vision and fight. And vision, not in the way that Don was a visionary in the market, but the way that Don helped us see things in our industry, see things in each other, see things in people, and see things about ourselves. And, you know, he helped me see things, and he helped me learn things from the time I was this 23-year-old young and, like Jeannie said, poor student, kid who grew up on the south side of Chicago, who had no idea what he wanted to do except a dream to play professional baseball. And when that fell apart, a marketing class sort of showed up, and that seemed like it might be a little bit of fun. Turns out that I was able to secure an internship, and at the internship I met a whole bunch of folks that had come out of the program, and they encouraged me, if I wanted to do what they were doing, to come into to apply for and come into Medill, and I certainly did, and it was great. All through my life, Don has been a constant part, if you will. I'd come back to recruit. Ron Jacobs has just gone before me. First class project I worked with was with Ron Jacobs' class at Northwestern when I was executive at one of the startups, one of the marketing technology startups in town. The second one I did was with Martin and Don. And there was something about being in the classroom that really sparked me. And as things moved on, in 2009, I was given a chance to teach as an adjunct. I joined the faculty, and about the third class in, I realized that this was something that was just creating a certain joy in me that I had no idea was really there. A couple years later, I was continuing to teach, and Frank Mulhern calls me in. He goes, "Hey, I'd like you to teach this marketing management course in the fall, and I'd like you to teach with Don," which about blew me away to think that here I was, this young kid who come into the program, and here I am going to be co-teaching with Don Schultz. I didn't know if I was really up for it. But Don also helped me see things there in my ability to relate to students. And it was really so important to me. The last 8 years that Don was on campus, his office was next to mine, and I always got the biggest kick out of that. And it was such a pleasure because I could see him whenever he was on campus and I was on campus. And he was always kind, he was always thoughtful, and he was always provocative. He always made me think. He always made me better. And I just think that was great. Now, as far as the fighter part of it, when I was a student and I was interviewing for a job, I remember I got a call from an executive at one of the major agencies, and it was the follow-up after the whole day of interviews. And as the comment went on, as the feedback was going on, he said, "You know, we really like you." And he goes, "Well, by the way, you know, Don likes you too." And I was surprised. I said, "Really?" And he goes, "Yeah, he thinks you're a fighter. Thinks you're a fighter. You've got certain fight in you." And I thought, how did he see that? Because I thought that was something I was trying to play a much cooler cat. I did not want to be seen as sort of this hard driving, competitive type A person. But Don, somehow he saw it. And, you know, when I think about Don, I also think that he's a fighter. He fought for what he believed in. He fought for us as students. He fought for the faculty. And I think some of that work that Judy shared about Don blowing up things, he fought in a way that made us all think and made us all really better. In the Pride of the Yankees, at the end, Lou Gehrig, you know, in his address to the fans at Yankee Stadium, says he thinks he's the luckiest person on earth. And oftentimes I think for that ability to come to Northwestern as a 23-year-old kid, really didn't know my way in the world, trying to figure out who I was, to find Don, who's been with me so long, and to find the love of my life, it was quite a month, and I still think I'm the luckiest guy there is. So thank you, Heidi, for all your friendship over all these years. And thank you, Jim, for putting this together and giving me a chance to speak.
Yeah, follow that, Heidi, okay? Now, so I told you Gerry was a five-tool player, and I especially appreciated as a White Sox fan saying something nice about the Yankees, even if only in a movie. Thanks, Gerry. But again, I mean, think of this community. It constantly shocks me that we have these 4,000 really great people who don't know each other. As you know, we have modeled the alumni engagement program based, we benchmark federal witness protection. So we take no measures to let you know each other. I hope this meeting enables that. And here's an example. So several years ago, you know, before the restraining order kicked in, I was stalking alums on LinkedIn, where I found somebody who was from our program. He's our next speaker, is Rahul Roy. And I reached out to him and I said, well, geez, where have you been? And he said, I live on Orrington. He lived 3 blocks from us and we didn't know where he was. Rahul Roy, are you out there? Introduce, who are you, where are you? Tell us your Don story.
I think I'm unmuted, right?
You are, let's hear it.
Firstly, Heidi, so lovely to see your face after all these years. So I'm Rahul Roy. I was of the last program, the last MSA before we converted to IMC, so class of 91. And it struck me when I was thinking about today was it was 30 years ago to this month that we came to Evanston from India. And to speak for a few minutes for Don and to see all your faces is really amazing. And I can see Andrea Liss's face here. There's amazing connections. So we're still in Evanston. probably because of Don, I'm still in advertising 30 years later because I'm too terrified to disappoint him. So, and my wife had the luck and privilege of working for Heidi and Don at Agora for a few months while we were broke, fresh off the boat Indian students just trying to keep it together in Evanston. So we have more to thank the Schultz than just the fact that I took his ad decisions class, which terrified the shit out of me. So my story is actually a really simple one, and Jim knows the stories, but I'm going to repeat it because it is so perfectly Don. I think it was the third week. So probably literally this week, 30 years ago, I kind of bungled my way through the first set of classes. And I had worked in advertising a little bit in India, so I kind of knew the ropes, but I was too scared to speak in class because all of you, you know, confident Americans would just like say whatever you wanted to say, but I'd weakly have my hand up and say, "Excuse me, sir," and no one would listen to me. And, you know, Don really didn't give a shit. He was just waiting for someone to answer the question. But my first two papers, he actually graded me pretty well on, and then I wasn't saying anything in class. And there was some class that there was an oral presentation, and I just said, I'm keeping my mouth shut because everyone else speaks much better than I do. And in that booming voice of his, and you know, you all, come on, we all remember him. He was larger than life. And at that day, of course, he had this hat on that to me looked like a Texas 10-gallon. I think it was actually just a straw hat, but it looked really big. And that Oklahoma accent to me sounded straight out of Texas. And I wasn't answering. And he said, "Mr. Roy, will you answer the goddamn question? And don't give me any of that English is my second language crap, because I know you know these answers." I spoke in every class. It's the only class I got an A in because I was too scared not to do well. So we never stayed in touch. He's been enormously influential. I promise you all, I still love advertising because of the clarity Don gave me in his classes, his strategic insight, his kindness. He scared me into being good at what I do. And I will never forget that. So thank you all.
Thank you. And by the way, a blanket apology to all of you from Oklahoma to India for mispronouncing your name. I'm burdened with a New York Irish Catholic Democratic background. I'm trying to overcome it. So you know, just this week, I think I'm slowly figuring out that all these years I've been pronouncing BJ's name wrong because it's the J. So apologies to the 97% of humanity who doesn't look like me. But here's somebody whose name I can pronounce, if I may.
Yeah.
An alum of the program, a friend who's got a story. Mark, are you out there? Mark Davis.
How are you doing? Howdy from Texas. My name's Mark Davis.
Put in more syllables. Slow it down.
Slow it down. You know, I have so much to talk about that I have to go fast to hit your 3 minutes because you threatened me with Okie from Muskogee if I go over. So I was trying to step on the gas as quick as I could.
Kick it up. No more extra syllables.
Yeah, I knew Dr. Don Schultz as a fellow Okie and a University of Oklahoma alum, Boomer Sooner. He was also a Phi Kappa Psi fraternity brother, and the Oklahoma Alpha, who's celebrating its centennial, will recognize him in October as a distinguished alumni, and the National Fraternity gives their regards as well. I'm also a personal recipient of his much acclaimed Wicked Purple Pin at Northwestern. And on a side note, I think that should be an award, you know, the Purple Pin Award for the person that might ask the brightest question.
Good idea.
I knew him as a consultant and mentor. In fact, he really impacted the very direction of my life, and he gave me confidence to pioneer through my career working for companies like Dr. Pepper, AT&T, Intel, Netscape during the dot-com boom and Entrust. And I just want to give my best to Heidi and your family. I don't know you well. I obviously know Dr. Schultz, but I'm sure that if he were here, he would say that you're his better half. And we just want to thank you for sharing him with us. It's really a privilege. When I was asked to talk, I was a little shocked, but he wanted me to talk about the Okie side of Don Schultz. I believe y'all kind of know what I'm talking about. You know, Don Schultz always purposely had red dirt underneath his fingernails. And what I mean is that even though Dr. Schultz earned international acclaim and academic achievement, you always, beyond a doubt, knew that he was an Okie at heart. Because when you work hard and play hard in Oklahoma, you get covered, you know, with the red dirt. And besides Oklahoma football, he was one of those few who stood out. And he became famous with his Okie accent and became one of his most powerful trademarks. I first met Dr. Schultz when I opened the door at Medill School of Journalism in the summer of 1982. And I had no expectations. I was extremely naive and broke, Okie, and it was the furthest I'd ever been away from home. And I was a little shell-shocked. But Dr. Schultz soon sought me out and he said, howdy. And he brought me in his office and we became close. And I felt like we had a unique bond, but now I'm hearing that that was just, he had a unique bond with everybody. He frequently dusted me off during the program and kind of pushed me back into battle in the middle of adversity. After blistering personal attacks from another of his favorite faculty member, he called me in his office and set me down and he said, Mr. Davis, I heard you had a terrible time in there. And I really did. It was an extremely bad meeting. We had to take a break and my eyes were glistening. And, you know, he just sat there and stared at me until I laughed. And it was really a voice from home, toughening my skin. You know, I would have years in the boardroom that I needed to hear Dr. Schultz say, get your butt back in the room, you know, get back in battle. And one of the greatest days of my life was when I got a job offer from Y&R New York, Ogilvy, and Tracy Locke. And I told Dr. Schultz, and he leapt out of his chair and shook my hand, and he just blurted, go ask your favorite professor which job you should take. And Dr. Schultz stood in the hallway close enough to listen to my exchange without being seen. But when I came out, he just smiled and turned around, went in his office, and he closed his door. And it was just, it's a moment that I think I'll just always remember, because he was in my corner, even though maybe somebody else wasn't so much. I would argue that being an Okie was Dr. Schultz's secret sauce, the reason to believe, and his personal brand differentiation. His famous, who cares, would probably only be just 2 words if he didn't deliver it with his trademark top Okie accent, and he milked it for all it's worth. You know, Dr. Schultz didn't hail from New York City, Miami, New York, San Francisco, went to OU, and he was an Okie boy. And he made a name for himself at Tracy Locke, which was kind of a Southwest agency. It was that common man Okie touch with uncommon insight that made him sought out at universities and corporations around the world. And I reached out to him a few times for consulting for me. He never, ever let us forget that he was a common man from Oklahoma. But boy, did he have uncommon intellect and presence. Who cares, Dr. Schultz would say. I am one of the thousands who can confidently say we care. Thank you, Dr. Schultz. I hope heaven was ready when you opened that door. It'll never be the same. And I know I was never the same after I opened the door at Medill School of Journalism at Fisk Hall and shook Don Schultz's hand. I really am honored to speak and share my fondness and great memories of a great man from Oklahoma.
Well,
thank you.
Thank you so much. And I have to tell you, the whole idea of Don the Okie making a stop in Texas and then running an ad agency for a national account on Park Avenue across from the Waldorf. Oh man. So something for all of us. Let me try once again, because of my incompetent technical staff, that would be me. We were unable to connect with my evil twin earlier. We're going to try once again. Gary Slack, are you out there somewhere? Who are you? Where are you? And what's your Don story?
I sure am, Jim. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Are we audio, video? Because actually, because I look exactly like Gary, I can act it out.
Okay.
Gary.
We're on audio.
Okay.
My name is Gary Slack, and I was never directly schooled in class by Don. Never paid a cent of tuition to Northwestern. Apologize for that. But around 1988, when I was considering leaving Omnicom and forming my own agency, I was struggling with whether to create a PR firm or a advertising agency. And I read Don's book, Don and the late great Stan Tannenbaum, and certainly Robert Lauterborn, who I hope is on the call today, Integrated Marketing Communications, and it sent me in a whole new direction for my new agency, which was in business for 31 years. I closed it down in December, and I'm now fully retired. Don influenced me from day one all the way to the close of my career. About 6, 7, 8 months ago, Jim Carey and I contacted Heidi and asked her if she and Don could go to lunch. This was back in the winter, pre-COVID. They kindly and graciously agreed. It was tough getting there for Don with oxygen and a walker, but he made it. He and I ordered the same thing, which was good for neither of us, but we enjoyed it. And the first part of the lunch, Don regaled us with stories that we wanted to hear of his upbringing, some of which Jim had already heard, of his years in Oklahoma, of how he went to Texas, how he got into the ad business, how he got to New York, and then Chicago, and then to Michigan, and then into teaching. It was fascinating. And then I asked a question, and I had debated Heidi and Jim whether I should ask this question, but we all knew that Don was suffering, and we feared that we might not ever be able to see him again. So I asked him the question at lunch, which he accepted very graciously, which was, Don, how would you like to be remembered? And he paused a bit, and while he paused, I pondered what his answer might be. I thought maybe he might say, well, I'd like to be remembered for having, for being an Okie and having made it big in New York and Chicago, or having made it big in the advertising business. Or perhaps he might want to be remembered for all of the work he did for Borden, working with Elsie the cow to sell all that milk. And then I thought, well, maybe he will say he wants to be remembered for having really being the pioneer and the inventor and the developer of the entire concept of integrated marketing communications. And then I said, well, maybe he might want to be remembered as marketing legend of the stature of someone like Phil Kotler. Or maybe he might want to be remembered as a marketing legend, which he truly is, in many other countries around the world, notably China. Well, after those things passed through my head, I knew his answer was going to be a little humbler and a little purer. And his answer, which repeats a couple things a couple of you have already said today, and it was very short and sweet, was I made people think. That's what I want to be remembered for. I made people think. He didn't say I taught people how to think. I honestly think, and Jim, Heidi, you can correct me, I think he said, I made people think, which was his style. And he's made me think throughout my 31 years in business, still does every day, and will do so forever for many of us. Thank you again, and back to you, Jim.
Well, thanks,
Thank you, Gerry.
I'm glad we were able to connect. Couple of things, because it was actually Don's 80th birthday party that Gerry and I were both there, and it was Heidi who said, clearly you are evil twins. So I do appreciate that. But also, so at these lunches, so the way Don would eat, you know, come on. So I'm out to lunch with Heidi, Don, and we're at the joint across from Wrigley, you know, where McDonald's used to be. And I'm having like a beet salad, Mr. Excitement. And Don orders what? Grits, what? Gravy, you know, biscuits. I mean,
probably.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. So the nice waitress came over, and I explained to her that Don was only 43 years old, but he ate like this. And this is why Heidi kept me around, because I would save her the trouble of saying these things. So thank you, Gerry. And Gerry and Don and I, for years, have been kind of co-conspirators. Gerry was, for years and years, ran the Business Marketing Association globally. In applying IMC principles to businesses selling to other businesses, where in many cases it actually maps much better than business to consumer stuff does. So next, my new BFF, Taylor Mason, who brings an interesting sensibility as somebody, not only an alum of ours, but somebody who communicates with audiences based on his insights into who they are and what they know. IMC principles. Taylor, who are you? Where are you? What's your Don story?
Thanks, Jim. Gosh, I've got so much to say, and I know I only have 3 minutes, and it takes me 30 minutes to say hello. I guess the first thing is, Mrs. Schultz, it's nice to meet you virtually. I'm a little freaked out that he was married and to such a lovely person. So those two things have totally messed up my 3-minute presentation. You seem like a really lovely person. My experiences with Mr. Schultz are a little bit different than everybody. Hi, Andrea. Some of my classmates are here. It's interesting that I'm here, everyone. I'm a graduate of MSA back when it was still the Medill School of Journalism and Advertising, Science of Advertising degree. And there was like 23 people on the ladder of importance way ahead of me. So who knows why I'm here. Professor Schultz had a huge influence on me, and I'm not in, nor do I ever want to be in, the wonderful business of integrated marketing and or advertising. I'm a comedian by trade, and the mantra that Mr. Schultz laid on me affected me far beyond most of the people who took his class, because he made me into a comedy writer. And I'll give you a couple of quick examples in my 3-minute dissertation here. One is, who cares rings in my head every time I walk on stage in a comedy club, at a casino, on a sound stage somewhere, because the whole point is to make people who have nothing in common with me, an upper middle class white boy, how am I gonna make them care? I'll give you a couple of quick examples. I live in New Jersey, the only state in America where we use air freshener outdoors. That's what I call a Schultz joke, because the punchline is a one-word punchline, outdoors. I'll give you another example. I live in New Jersey. We have neighbors, except in New Jersey, we call them witnesses. These are Don Schultz inspired jokes that work for just about every kind of audience, because it's his, I can hear him telling me, let's see, I think in September of 1982, as I was just a great student. I was an amazing student. There was so much purple on my paper. I honestly thought I was gonna be Prince. The fact that he singled me out on a regular basis, one of my favorite moments, sitting next to Mary Beth Samuel. I don't know if she's here, But he came over to me and pointed at me and he said, your problem is you don't like to think. And that's exactly right. He's exactly right. I had a lot of cantankerous, gosh, to get through this in 3 minutes. I actually tried to one-up Mr. Schultz, which was a lot of fun, I think, for the class. At the end of our school year, actually, he told the whole class that we were one of the most entertaining groups that he'd ever had. I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing, but one day I decided I'm gonna nail him. The answer, I can't remember what it was. You know, we get these projects for potato chip company, real estate agency, dad's root beer, all these different things. And he was always use powerful words and be efficient, be succinct. Okay, so I'm gonna do a one-word answer. So I just took a piece of paper and I wrote down location and put it on a piece of paper and put my name on it, just scrawled my name on it. And lo and behold, that day, the answer was location. So I just was, he's looking through the papers and he finally comes to mine and he holds it up and he looks at it and he doesn't say anything. He just crumpled it up and threw it away and went on to the next paper. Ah! My one moment of glory, and he took it away. He's influenced me. You cannot imagine. I've been with comedy writers. I graduated in 1983, and I've been with comedy writers. I've been with comedy superstar celebrities, and I always tell people, well, a great example, there's a young lady trying to get her set together with The Tonight Show, and she's got a joke, and the joke is, okay, it's, we gave my mother plastic surgery. We took away all of her credit cards. And I said, no. It's gotta be a one-word punchline. We took her credit cards away. Oh yeah, so I've made a living basically doing that. Oh, and one other thing that has nothing to do, but I promised someone in my class. There are people in my class who are actually, what is this? These are people from Medill School the Medill School of Integrated Marketing Concepts. Really, who's this guy? His name is Jim Carey. Jim Carey, the actor? No, aged. No, that's not the same guy. You're looking, no, stop. Who's this? That's Mrs. Schultz, Don Schultz. Actually, to be in the business of ventriloquism right now, this is a boon time for the business of ventriloquism, because I don't think there's ever been a better time to be a ventriloquist. Hold that for me. To be a ventriloquist than in 2020 during a pandemic, when you're not allowed to go out of your house without one of these on. This is great. Yeah, it's awesome. Right. You can say, Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. I know, it's incredible. So this has been, my career there is no doubt in my mind at all. I live in a house far more than I ever possibly could have deserved. I have 2 wonderful kids. Today's my wedding anniversary. So I'm happy to take a few minutes out. I'm married to a saint. We've been married for 34 years as of today. She plays a little game with me every morning called Guess What Mood I'm In Today, which, by the way, is a game that I've never won. So you guys, Jim, everybody, Mrs. Schultz, everyone, thank you so much for letting me be a part. He was just an amazing influence on me. I would not have half the life that I have had if it were not for Don Schultz. And what's weird about that too is he never knew. So I'm so glad that I can come on here and tell you how much he influenced me. And to this day, I walk on stage. I do these virtual comedy shows just like this, believe it or not. And my first thought is, who cares? How am I gonna make all these people, I can hear him. Who cares? You know, so, and listen, he was amazing. He was, just the most amazing person. So thank you very much. Jim, thank you. Mrs. Schultz, thank you. And all my classmates that are watching, I apologize sincerely for me. Okay, bye.
Taylor, thank you. That was great. It is now. First of all, it's good to see Taylor bounce back. When part of the story when Gary and I had lunch with him, I guess it was early February, Heidi. Don also talked about his ability to change course, his ability to be agile, and now we're seeing Taylor's ventriloquism skills evolve to the new age. And look, this is a guy who used to make a lot of money on cruise ships, so I'm glad he's doing well. Let me introduce another good friend of the program from a long way away. Jean Lin, I think, is in Taiwan. It must be an ungodly hour. Thank you for joining us. who are you, where are you, and what's your Don story?
Hi, everyone. I'm not sure. Can you hear me?
We can. You're
Hi,
lovely.
Heidi.
Hello, Jean.
Hi, Heidi. Hi, Jean. Hi, Jim. How are you? I'm so glad to participate in this session. And I feel so good when I hear Roy talking about his story, because obviously we're on the same class and I haven't seen him for such a long time. Hi, Roy. We always call you Prince Roy when we were in school, but you didn't know that. My story actually was quite similar to Roy, but in a very different way. And it shows us how thoughtful Don is, because if he pressed me in class, like he pressed Roy and asked me to speak, he's gonna lose my friendship forever. So he didn't choose to do it that way. That was 30 years ago, and in the same class. And after 2 papers, he graded me well. I never spoke a word in class. I was just from Taiwan. I know nothing about America. After class, he actually, in his loud voice, he tried to speak softly, but in his loud voice, he said, "Miss Lin." And I was like, what's going on? And he said, come here, come to my office. I just want to know a little more about what you think. And he said, why don't you ever, he said, you have a lot of point of view. Why didn't you ever say it in class? And I look at him, I said, well, maybe I'm afraid of you. You're quite scary and intimidating as a professor. He paused for 5 seconds and he looked at me. You know, I swear to God, I think he's gonna kill me or something. And he said to me, "Miss Lin, just be yourself. You're scared of yourself. You're not scared of me. Just be yourself. Who cares?" That phrase, "just be yourself, who cares," I have carried with me for many years. This helped me when I started my own digital business. I look in the mirror and I said, just be yourself, who cares? I carried that to Cannes Lion before I went on a main stage. Just be yourself, who cares? It gave me the courage when the network wanted to ask me to run a 6,000 people company. I look into the mirror. I know I'm scared, but I look in the mirror and I said, be yourself, who cares? That's something that, you know, the influence that Don has on us, beyond his brilliance, is his kindness and his courage and his curiosity. And that influence will never go away because I see that every day still in me. A couple years ago, I bring the top 150 people back to Chicago for our global leadership meeting. And I asked Don to give a speech in that leadership meeting in Chicago. I went on stage and introduced Don. And you know, I'm global CEO of that company, so everybody is scared of me, I realize. But after I gave the introduction, after the speech of Don, one of my colleagues came to me and said, you know, I just realized today, you're so scared of somebody. You're scared of your professor when you're introducing him. And that was quite a moment of realization. The respect that I have for him over the years is there to stay. And that first few weeks when I was in Evanston has shaped so much in me, and it's still in me. My last meeting with Don was when I visited Don and Heidi in their home in Chicago. I brought a trend report that we wrote to Don. I didn't know what would be the conversation would be for that afternoon, but obviously Don is in his best in interrogating me about everything we wrote there about blockchain and token economy. And we spent 2 hours debating that. Well, I left his home he gave me a big hug, and he said, "Keep sending me all those interesting stuff. I'm so bored at home." I love Don for his kindness, for his intelligence, but I think the most important of all is he taught me authenticity is more important than perfection. And I'm so glad to have a chance to share all these stories with all of you. It means a lot to me. Thank you, Heidi. Thank you, Jim, for involving me in this wonderful ceremony. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. It's beautiful.
Jean, thank you so much. And, you know, just among the themes going through here today, of course, Don's big and scary, intimidating, but how kind he was. And let me tell you how polite he was. Now, this will surprise you for those of us who've been on the wrong end of something. So you guys send out lots of notes to Don. Now, I cleared this with Heidi beforehand, and we didn't know what was going to happen. And hundreds of notes come in. And Don wasn't, I think it was Heidi's term, Don was gobsmacked. And, you know, it was nice that you were able to do this for him, but what did he then do? He has hundreds of emails coming at him. He sat down and started writing thank you notes to everybody, reflecting back on the days, interacting. My Lord, I mean, this isn't not an emoji, a personal thing. And, you know, I thought in the past 10, 15 years, I had a special relationship with Don. But all of us had a special relationship with Don. For that, we should be grateful. And let me call on David Sollitt. Are you out there somewhere in Wyoming?
I am out here in rainy Wyoming, and
who are you? Where are you? What's your Don story, David?
Well, Don actually saved my career before it started, and when I thought it was almost over, actually. I was a 1980 grad of the advertising program, and it's funny because I went into Medill having trained for 2 years to be a crusading environmental lawyer, and decided in order to do that I would have to be a lawyer, and that didn't seem like it was a great career move. So I went into advertising and through a story that's too long for here, but and Don was teaching creative, and I always thought that creative was just putting clever words and being funny, and Don really hammered to me the importance of strategy. And as John said, you know, what's the benefit over and over and over again. So when I graduated from Medill, because I didn't have much background, I didn't really have a job yet. So I was working for John Porter in his first congressional campaign. And I thought, well, maybe I'll be going to DC and off to being a crusading environmental lawyer again. When out of the blue, I got a call from an agency that nobody who hadn't read agency in a couple of months had heard of. There was an agency called Backer and Spielvogel. They were 7 months old. They had just picked up the Miller Brewing Company account as their first account, and they'd never hired an assistant account executive. So, so I went out and I interviewed with them, and I felt a little bit like a seed farmer because they were all New Yorkers. It was a 100% New York agency. And they offered me the job at the end of the day, and the first assistant AE they'd ever hired to help on the Miller High Life business. And my new boss and I had a beer. You can guess which brand it was. And I said, so how is it that you found me? And he says, well, Dean Scaros goes, well, I called this guy named Don Schultz to see if there were any 1980 grads that were still on the bench. And he told them about me. And he said, you had a pretty good grasp on strategy. And then he says, but he really knew what we were looking for because he also told me that you had tended bar at Arizona State University, which launched me on a 16-year or 20-year career in the beer business at Backer and Spielvogel with Miller and Miller Lite, Chicago at 16 years on Coors, and then going back to Y&R And through all those years, Don and I kept trading emails over the years, keeping in touch. And then I got to Jackson Hole and had my own agency here. But I am now on my 4th career, and I was able to interact with Don. This was last year. I wrote him an email. I had my biggest client, which is the one that never pays me, is for a organization down in Africa had a great revolutionary strategy for conservation in Africa called using all women rangers that I thought Don might appreciate. And we had an event in Chicago, and I sent him a long involved email and about the whole thing. And lo and behold, he called me out of the blue on my cell phone, and he says, "Dave, this is Don." I go, "Geez, I know that voice from 40 years ago." And he said, "I would love to come out." I didn't realize he'd been sick, but he says, "I'm kind of housebound, so I'm not going to be able to make your event, but I sure like to hear about it." And I talked to him about 10 or 15 minutes, and it was like 40 years ago. He asked me the same questions and about strategy and things like that. And when I heard that he had passed, I just said, I've got to sit in on this, because he helped me get into advertising, and he helped me get out of advertising. So it was a great thing. And Heidi, I met you once at a Chicago ad group thing that Don was there in, and he's just been an unbelievable force in my life, even though our meetings had been kind of, shall we say, intermittent. So,
David, thank you so much. I occasionally try and explain the American West to our many Chinese students, and I recommend that they watch the movie Shane, which was, of course, in Jackson Hole. And over 12 years of effort, 0 of them have followed my recommendation. But thank you for sharing. Now, folks, it will not be a shock to you that there's so much to be said, and we have an incompetent host. So we are running a little over. We have a couple more speakers, and we're going to close with Martin and Heidi, and tuck you in. We actually had to think about where we go from here and what we do with all this content. But Deb, are you out there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Where are you? What's your Don story?
I'm Deb Zahay-Blatz. I'm just south of Austin, Texas, and I teach at St. Edward's University. I'm a professor of marketing and head up a digital marketing and analytics program. And I want to thank you and Heidi for having me on this call. It's been so inspiring to listen to everybody's stories. But what I wanted to share is also how IMC changed my life. I didn't realize that Don also went back to get his PhD mid-career, because I worked in industry and went back then for my PhD. I'm also a Northwestern grad, but not Medill, sorry to say. So the other one, the Kellogg MBA. I was in transition. I was teaching, and I have my own consulting business. So I went to this presentation about IMC when I think Clarke was there, and Paul and Don, and I met all you guys, and it really changed my life. I went back and I wrote this little graphic up about IMC and how I could apply it to my business-to-business consulting business, which is still in effect, and formed a friendship, and then became a co-author with Don. He was always so generous, even though he didn't really understand what was happening on my level because he was so tall. And he would always say the same thing. He would always say the same thing about Heidi, that he really couldn't see her, you know. But I think he was like a foot tall. How tall is he, Heidi? Like 6'5"?
At his best, he was 6'7".
6'7". See, I thought so, more than a foot taller. I'm 5'6".
Oh yeah, 1.5 feet taller than I was.
Than you were. Yeah. He didn't really know what was happening at my level, but he did his best to be a mentor. We wrote papers together. I remember him needling me when this one paper was not being done at the speed of light. And the thing that I really wanted to share, though, was when I became editor of Journal of Research and Interactive Marketing, I was advised by Emerald Publishing to find some high impact authors and invite them to write for the journal. And I thought, well, who can I invite? And of course, Don was the top of the list, and he was so generous. He wrote several pieces that really helped the journal be cited and downloaded. And we went within the time of my editorship and a few years beyond to really becoming a good second journal and getting a Clarivate impact factor, which we didn't have to begin with. But you know, he didn't have to do that. He was just very selfless and very much wanted to help the profession, you know, realizing that we needed good publishing outlets. So I wanted to share that and my gratitude for that.
Thank you, Deb. And for all of you, let this be an example of how Deb overcame the disadvantage of her MBA, nevertheless went on to a meaningful career.
Yes, I realized I was doing IMC and in business, but I didn't have a name for it. Well, so Don helped put that name on what we were all doing.
Deb, we all have a past. Next up, another longtime friend of the program, Todd Townsend. Are you out there? Who are you? Where are you? What's your Don story?
I am, Jim. Hello to all, and thanks again, Jim, to you and the team that put this together. I am Todd Townsend, 87 MSA graduate, and am living in Dallas, Texas, where I've most recently been working as Chief Marketing Officer for Regional Bank. Heidi, I want to just say quickly to you, Jeff, and Daniel, how much we appreciate this opportunity to celebrate our beloved Dr. Schultz. I still can't call him Don. And he was always so happy when he spoke of you, your sons and grandchildren. I just want you to know we not only share your loss, but we're here to support you. And we're here also to celebrate Don's life because he had such an impact. And I don't know if you remember meeting me over the years, but it's great to see you again. I met Dr. Schultz in person when I went on my interview at Medill. Dr. Schultz was from a small town in Oklahoma. So was I. But he also went to a state school, Oklahoma University, and was very proud of that, of course, as he should be. I went to Oklahoma State, which he used to have fun giving me grief about. I showed up for my interview in early January, the day after the Bears had won the NFC Championship, and it was a record cold day, even by Chicago standards. He welcomes me, gives that big paw of a hand, sticks that big paw of a hand of his out, and says, "Sit down. Welcome, Okie." I was nervous, so he leaned back in his chair, purple pen in hand. He said, "So I hear you want to attend graduate school at Northwestern at Medill." My response was, "Yes, sir. I very much like to do that." Dr. Schultz said, and then just said, "Well, you've already been to Oklahoma State and Stillwater. What could you possibly learn at Northwestern in Chicago?" So that was our running joke. With 33 years now into my career, I still use so much of what I learned from not only Dr. Schultz, Dr. Block. By the way, Dr. Block, I can still apply the red fish and blue fish analogy in a barrel for statistics. I'm happy to say, Dr. Beth Barnes, she was on her way to being that. Stan Tannenbaum, Jack Scissors, and others. What I learned about, I don't think anyone's mentioned so far on the call because this is in the early days of IMC, direct marketing as formal education. I learned about this stuff called scanner data, customer databases, and what future value they would have, what people like Vaughn's are already doing with them and others, and direct marketing. None of my peers, when I got to what I'd like to think is one of the best ad agencies in history, had ever even heard of those topics. And it was thanks to progressive thinking from Dr. Schultz and its faculty that has helped me stay alive on that. So with that, I will say, Dr. Schultz, thank you for being a role model, along with my Medill and Okie friends. Thanks for your generosity, your support, and the education. You were and are a role model to me to this day. And thank you for showing me that kids from small towns can actually succeed in the big world.
Thank you, Todd. And but let me take it from me. Data's a fad. See, Taylor, I had a one-word punchline. I said fad.
That's true.
Next up, alum of the program, who mysteriously is decades younger than the rest of you. Matt Knight, you are somewhere out in the American West, aren't you? Who are you? Where are you? What's your Don story? Is he here? Is he on the radar screen?
I'm here, Jim.
Okay.
How are you guys? Go Cats. I'm coming from the Rocky Mountains, Heidi. We're out here by Park City in Salt Lake City, Utah. Thunderstorms rolling through, but wanted just to take a minute just to send my condolences for the class of 2011. I had the great privilege to participate with Don. He had to jump in and take over one of our courses in the fall, and so I have fond memories of his tutelage, and he was a iconoclast, the best of the best. And I had the great opportunity my final quarter with Heidi in her branding class, and where she taught us the great principles of branding and customer loyalty. And so I'm grateful to have both Heidi and Don in my curriculum for the class of 2011. I'll just say quickly that Medill and Northwestern changed my course of life on a personal note. My father went to that other school next door, Kellogg, in late 60s, but he was a marketer. And I want you all to know that I grew up with stories of Dad's experiences at Northwestern, how it was the hallmark of marketing curriculum. And my dad, when he dropped me off at Medill in 2010, looked at Jim Carey and others and said, why in the world was IMC not around in the late 60s? Because that's what was in our blood. That's what we loved, was marketing psychology, data analytics, branding, and customer loyalty. And so from the class of 2011, Heidi, we love you. We love the program. And on a personal note, from the Knights out in Salt Lake City, we love Northwestern. And so grateful to be on the call today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Matt. So his first day, I remember it. So Matt's first day, it's in September. He's on campus and he's there with his dad, Gordon. And he asks me, so do we have any real estate classes? And I'm kind of looking around. I didn't have a good answer for that one. Nevertheless, he's doing fine. Next up, a contender in the quarantine beard growing contest and a person who has had to explain too many times to various deans why I should not be terminated. My former boss several times, Frank Mulhern. Frank, are you there?
I'm here. You hear me okay?
Yeah, but that's not really in the Willie Nelson class that you got with the beard going.
Well, it's a different style altogether I'm working on, yeah. So I'm Frank Mulhern. I'm a professor of IMC. I've been at Medill 25 years. I actually arrived at IMC, like many of you have mentioned, because of Don. He didn't directly hire me. Clarke Caywood was a department chair, and I think I was his first hire as a faculty member. But I was hired because Don Schultz had decided that IMC needed to have databases in it, and we needed to teach database marketing. So they hired me to come in to teach database marketing. There was only one problem. I didn't know anything about database marketing, but I knew enough about statistics, and I taught statistics, and eventually I taught database marketing. And I actually co-taught a course that included IMC strategy and database marketing with Don for 20 some years. But let me tell you the story of the first time we co-taught. The course was marketing, the first quarter course in marketing. And we decided that I would teach the first 5 weeks and teach traditional marketing. I had come from an MBA program where I was on the faculty elsewhere. And then Don would teach the second 5 weeks and teach them IMC. So there we go. So I taught my first 5 weeks. Now, people who know Don probably can guess what I'm going to say happened. I taught my first 5 weeks and felt pretty good about it, and I was done. Then Don comes in the next week on the Monday morning, and I went to the class to hear his lectures. And he says to the students, everything you learned in those last 5 weeks is wrong. I'm going to tell you why it's all wrong, and I'm going to tell you why IMC is the way to go, not marketing management in the 4 Ps. And there I'm sitting, and the students are all looking back at me and thinking, why did we have to go through those 5 weeks of all that stuff? And here this guy comes in and says, oh, that's wrong. And then a week or 2 after that, Don assigned a case. It was a B2B case about pile driver pads. I didn't know what a pile driver was, let alone a pile driver pad. But anyway, some gigantic hammer knocks this thing in the ground and you have to put a pad on the top. And it was a pricing case. And Don assigned this to the students, and they didn't know anything about pile drivers. And they're asking me for help. And I said, I don't know. Everything I know is wrong. Don't you know that? Then I was so impressed. And many of you have mentioned Don and his purple pen. He assigned the case. It was due maybe on a Monday. Thursday was the next class. He comes in, 85 students, everyone had to do the case individually, 7 or 8 page paper each. He comes in the very next class, all the papers are completely graded, all marked up. He did it all himself. And I'm thinking, wow, for a big shot scholar, researcher, that's very impressive. No graduate assistant, no hired graders. That was really impressive. A couple other things that people have touched on that are related. I traveled a lot with Don, and sometimes with Don and Heidi. I mean, Don and I co-taught seminars in Germany, Austria, Hong Kong, and many, many times in China. In China, we would go to PKU, Peking University. There's a very famous professor there named Professor Chen. Someone actually mentioned his name in the comments that are stringing along. Professor Chen is the second most famous professor of advertising in China. The most famous is a guy named Don Schultz. And he was quite renowned. It was kind of odd because at that time when we traveled, I had something happened on September 11th, 2001, not what happened in the morning in New York, but in the afternoon, Don Schultz got a new boss. I was appointed department chair, and I was in charge of all the faculty, and I was now Don's boss. And so he took me with him. No, we both got invited by Professor Chen to some world summit in Beijing at PKU. And we went to some banquet dinner one evening, and they had this big brown table for a big Chinese meal. And they had this big chair that looked like a throne. And that was where Don was going to sit. And the rest, and I sat somewhere way around the other end. And after the dinner, they handed me Don's briefcase. And they thought I was his lackey, and I was there to carry his bag. And I said, and Don says, what are you doing? Why are you giving him my bag? And they said, well, we figured he would carry it for you. And Don goes, well, he's my boss. He's not going to carry my bag. So I gave Don his bag and said, here, carry this yourself. And the last thing I want to mention is a couple people on the faculty have mentioned that Don would throw bombs in faculty meetings. And since I was in charge of the faculty and the programs, a lot of them would be, thrown towards what I was saying. And one year, my assistant, Robin Young, came to me and says, we need to schedule the faculty meetings. When do you want to have them? I said, well, let me talk to Don because I want to check his travel schedule. And she goes, oh, I see. You want to make sure he's going to be there. I said, no, I want to make sure he's not going to be there. I'm going to find out when he's out of the country, and that's when we schedule the meetings. Actually, that is true, but it wasn't, it wasn't that bad. Then he would change his schedule and come to the, it didn't work. But actually, relevant to the bomb throwing, the key thing about that was it was always about making things better. Don was all about excellence and very, very high standards. And I actually kind of been a professor long enough to see, I think, what is a slippage of standards in higher education. Don would have none of that. Research output, teaching quality, curriculum quality of the students, quality of the faculty. When I came in 1985, we had one program with about 80 students in the full-time master's program. That was it. There are now over 700 IMC students currently enrolled in Medill. I mean, it's a monumental progress that it was the right idea at the right time, and especially thanks mostly to Don, it's continued to evolve and get better in the dramatic changes that are going on in our profession these decades.
Frank, thank you for that. It should be said, I was also undermining you at the same period of time, kind of in the same way. There were times when you were teaching in the morning and I was teaching in the evenings, and the students would come to me, they're very perplexed, saying, but Frank said this. And I would helpfully explain, well, Frank and I agree 90% of the time, and the other 10% of the time, he's wrong. So I just helped them put it into that sort of strategic context.
Yeah, so now I know.
So thank you, Frank. And next, if we can, the immortal, the Hall of Famer, the man who had Don Schultz as a graduate assistant, Martin Schultz. Are you still with us? Could you give us a few minutes? Is he there? Tammy, wake him up.
No, I'm here.
Okay, get the robots going.
Me. Since this is my second effort, I'm going to be extraordinarily brief. I will honestly say Don is a legitimate genius, extremely talented. All of the characteristics that you'd want to see he had. It's very sad, actually, the last few years. I shouldn't talk like this, but we should be on our way back from Bordeaux, France, having just completed our presentation at Icoria, which all got canceled and everything got canceled. But that article is the last thing Don and I worked on that got officially published in the end of January. And there are several other papers that will continue that they won't be as well written though, because he won't have the opportunity to do any final edits. But there's probably nobody, maybe except Heidi, that will miss him more than I will. And I don't know really what else to say.
Well, thank you, Martin. Our hearts are with you, and, you know, for having lost a running buddy and a partner and a colleague and an inspiration, and somebody who, by the way, I know you kept in line too. Thank you for that. And Heidi, can you summarize? Well, you can't. Can you share the words with the group?
You know, Don spoke at many, many conferences and was often asked to be the one to summarize or was the final speaker. And he always used the same line, which he said, I realize I am the only one standing between you and the cocktail reception. So I will keep this brief. Listening to everybody talk, particularly those that were former students from the 80s and from that period, I think we can all agree that style of teaching that was so unique to Don probably could not be done in today's university without a lawsuit or making headlines somewhere. But I go back to what Gerry said. I was at that luncheon when he said what he wanted, and all the way through, it rings so true. What he wanted was to get people to think. And that was his method in that time. I wrote to someone recently, you know, for some people, because he loved to challenge, he loved to goad, he loved to provoke. For some people that was difficult, but the best rose to the challenge. And for that, they learned new skills and found skills in themselves, which is what he wanted. And I do want to say, I hope this has been as good for everybody else as it has been for me in sharing memories and of Don and a life, a successful life well led. And thank you all.
Well,
thank you particularly to Jim and to Chris and to Charlie for this. Has been the behind the scenes on this has been incredible, and we are all deeply, deeply appreciative of it.
Okay. Well, Heidi, thank you so much, and it's been a joy to do it. It's been a joy to hear from all of you. But let me leave us with two aspects of Don's legacy. Number one, all of us have got great stuff, and we got to figure out how to pull all this stuff together. The photos I'm seeing, the stories I'm hearing, the stuff you've written to me, the stuff on YouTube. Gang, I've got a 3-hour video that Don and I did 10 years ago when he explained the history of IMC to me. There were a bunch of deans who didn't like that though, okay? So I mean, but all of us have all of these things, and wouldn't it be wonderful if we could find some way to put it together and share it? And number two, that's just, you know, that's the museum. But number two, the legacy is you. This man affected the way we think in our relationships and our lives in so many different ways. And so the challenge to us, and there he was, Martin just told us, he's 86 and he's still pumping stuff out. Holy cow, a challenge for us all. So I think you're all splendid, and I think we can all rise to the occasion. Thank you very much for your time and your participation, your contribution, and I hope you feel as good about the future that Don helped create as I do. If I was smart, I'd figure out how to cue Oki from Muskogee, but I can't. So thank you all, and good night.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Have a good evening or a good day. For those of you who are in Asia, I know it's tomorrow. So thank you, Jean, and Yasmin is still, I think it's still on the line. So those of you who are in the future, have a good day.
Yeah, we kept you long because we were already drinking. So we didn't care about keeping you away from the bar.
Oh, there's Yasmin. Hello.
Good night, all.
Okay, good night, everyone.
Reach out to Heidi individually. I've got her email if you need it. Let me know.
Yeah.
Good night.
Bye-bye.